We are ready to do this.
All right.
Ready to convince the people that this part of the show was recorded on the same day as the other part of the show.
It's very important for some reason that they believe that, yes.
Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast watching, analyzing, and discussing the collective works of Mike Flanagan. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host. Joining me, as always, he's handcuffed to the microphone, so we will have to keep doing this podcast. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
It's okay. I've got my drinking straw, so I'll be
good.
fine. Yeah.
Where's your cup, though? Can you
It's
reach it?
It's right over. It's right over. Oh, God. Oh, no.
This didn't work as well in video. You should have actually handcuffed yourself. If you were committed to this bit, you would have bought some handcuffs.
I know.
You would have handcuffed yourself to the microphone, and you would have not eaten or drinking for 24 hours before the recording.
It would be good to own a couple of pairs of sturdy, high-quality handcuffs.
I'm not going to follow up on that at all. We're just going to move right on.
Sounds good.
This week on the show, it is our overview episode. We are going to be taking one final look at Stephen King's Gerald's Game before we move on. And we'll be joined on the show in just a moment by Kim C. of the Year of Underrated Stephen King podcast, a wonderful show in which Kim, all by her lonesome, dissects and analyzes a lot of King's novels. I think she started with the underrated Stephen King novels, but has kind of moved on to others. We've already recorded that conversation. We're here from the future, so we know it was a great one. We think you guys are going to really, really enjoy every part of this conversation. Kim was a great guest to have on the show, and we're always so happy to have her.
Yeah, I'm excited for y'all to hear that. It's a good conversation. And then, of course, after that, we've got your mailbag questions from a couple of weeks ago to answer. So we'll be back with you after the discussion with Kim C.
Yeah, so let me pass it off then to past Matt, who I believe will introduce Kim, and then we'll get right down to the conversation.
All right, and here we have with us, joining us once again, the wonderful Kim C. from the Year of Underrated Stephen King podcast. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Scott.
Hi, so happy to have you back. We need your help. We have to talk about Gerald's Game, and we need all the help we can get. This was a tough one, so we're just gonna make you talk about it now, so we don't have to. Essentially, that's the plan.
I'm happy to assist in this trauma dump. But congratulations on Flanagan's Wake. This is awesome. This is rad.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot. Like we feel like we talk to you all the time, and we've talked to you twice before on the podcast. And I said that I was like, well, technically not the podcast because we're doing a different one now. So yeah, this is Kim joined us for I think both our conversations around it and our collectively one of our favorite King novels, Doomakey. So we got to chat with you about those wonderful novels, and we thought you were the perfect person to talk about this traumatic, wonderful novel that is Gerald's Game.
Oh, I'm honored? ? But no, it's truly great to process and decompress with you guys on this one.
So you just read this one, right? Like this was when I reached out to you to see if you wanted to come on the episode. You were like, yeah, I'm actively reading it for the first time right now.
Correct. It was first time read and first time watch of the film. So first times all around.
All right. So before we get into like the details of it, I guess just how you doing? What was your kind of reaction to the experience that is reading Gerald's Game?
Wow. Well, I have not yet in my King journey wanted to vomit and cry simultaneously. So that was a first for me. Very, very visceral reaction. But I was at the end extremely pleased I read it, and that's an amazing thing that King accomplishes with me. Even though it's a hard journey, it's a emotionally draining journey, I feel like there's a lot of good stuff in this novel that you guys have explored throughout your coverage where it is worth reading. But I have noticed in my Stephen King book club, and then just me personally looking at this story like, yikes, I think this might be a one read for me. I don't
Yeah.
know if I want to feel this again. I don't know if I want to go to this place with Jesse again. And I think it's okay, even though there are really fascinating psychological concepts in this novel. And it's really, especially at the time it was written, and what he's saying about women and what he's saying about mental health and healing from the past, lots of great stuff, lots of 21st century buzz. But it's like, this sucked, man, this is hard.
Yeah, our discussion question that we read the answers to last week was along the lines of, is when is it justified to have graphic content, and that may be any kind of graphic content, right? And I think my answer to that question in any context going forward is going to be to point at this book, where it's very graphic in every way that it can be, very explicit, and absolutely earns every molecule of that. It justifies it, and really, I think, brings you something um, extremely valuable. Like I feel like I got something extremely valuable out of this experience, not despite how hard it was to get through, but because of how hard it was to get through.
Yeah, I mean, it like I think we talked about on the episode, like the fact that King doesn't give you, the reader, an out, puts you so firmly in the experience of Jesse, both in the past and in the present, having to relive that past. Like, there's no escape from this. Like, you, the reader, can't run away from it. If you're going to keep reading the book, you're going to have to experience every single beat of everything that happens. And yeah, I agree. There's not a moment to me that feels like Kim, one of our favorite conversations I remember is when we talked about it, and we talked about, that scene in it. And I think we had slightly differing opinions on the necessity of it, the need of it. And I remember you saying, like, you could have just ripped this thing out and the book essentially still functions. And while I like to see more than you, I think that's true. This like this the scene in this book, the eclipse scene in this book, is essential to everything the book is doing. The book does not work without it, and I think most importantly, does not work without it playing out in the level of detail that it plays out in.
100%. Oh God, the eclipse scene, it's incredible. It really is. Just like you mentioned, the way that we are sort of held by a king. He has us by, imagine, if you will, if he just has the sides of your face and you cannot
Yeah.
look away, you can't close your eyes. But I think the line that really got me, the line that broke me, is it shortly after it's over, before Jesse goes upstairs, and it's still very emotional, as you can hear. And she looks at her dad and she says, "Am I all right?" And in that moment, it was like, oh my God, in that moment, he captured, as a young girl, your childhood is over. There is no safe harbor because dad is the wolf. And now dad has used you like potentially every other man out there wants to.
Mhm.
And it was it was just like, she wasn't a little girl in that moment for me. She was just this vulnerable little soul who loved her
Yeah.
father, and now everything is different. And so you are correct. The eclipse scene, in all its horror, it's masterfully done to make you understand this is what she has to face for the rest of her life. And this is her journey as a character. And it's all of our journey with her, which is insanely compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because I mean, one of the things that Matt and I struggled with mightily with this scene is as men and fathers, like, we looked at what was done by Tom from this perspective of this very kind of sacred obligation we have as parents, and specifically fathers. So it's really great to hear. Like, this is part of the reason why we wanted you on, right? Because we have this similar but very one-sided look on this thing that is the side of a man. And I am continually fascinated by the fact that King, a man, like, chose to sit down and go, okay, this is what I'm going to do next. Like, this is the thing I want to explore. Like it's shocking to me actually. But so I really appreciate your perspective on like very very in tune to Jesse's experience and what maybe not the details of Jesse's experience, but just what it's like to be a woman growing up in the world we live in. And then to have something like this happen to you that does, I love that takes away that one safe harbor, that one place that you're supposed to be safe, that you don't have to worry about these things that you have to worry about every time you step out your door. Yeah, incredibly powerful.
Yeah, right. I think I agree. I think we had a comment to this effect a few times, and I basically just agree. Where the scene itself is obviously disgusting on one level, but the scene that rips your heart out is what happens after the eclipse, where you begin to understand in a way that you haven't understood before, like what the permanent consequences are, like you just said, Kim, and it's it's like enraging. Like the first, like the first one is disgusting, the second, and then afterward it's enraging. Compared to that, the degloving scene is like I I, I do wonder how he conceptualized this story, right? Because it's like, did he think to himself like, I'm going to have um the most upsetting, viscerally disgusting scene ever put to the page. Oh, and then also a woman is going to deglove herself with handcuffs in a separate scene. Um, like, was he trying? I almost feel like somebody like challenged him or something, like to have something that was both extremely upsetting and also like fully earned and justified that by um just staking what's the metaphor I'm reaching for here, staking its place in your soul, essentially, like you're never going to forget this book or this experience and this character, and as painful as that is, like I think I feel like I keep returning to this idea that like I think that's good. Like he did us a favor by showing us this, because it's actually, it's a path out is what he's given us, or it's a um it's the idea that there is a path out, even, so that there
Yeah.
is some kind of way of healing from even something as horrible as this. Like, I think that's King being a softie yet again. Is this is not just a book about horrible trauma and the end. It's a book about how there's, if you're able to uh stand and be true, essentially, you there is a path out of that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is a book about the the physical becoming the metaphor. So like, you know, Jobert becomes a physical manifestation of the men in Jesse's past. The handcuffs are a physical manifestation of her feeling of being chained and locked up, and then almost the degloving becomes a physical manifestation of the the pain and effort it takes to escape from your past and to escape from these horrible things that happen to you and move on beyond. Like, it is not an easy thing to attempt to heal from a terrible thing that's happened to you, and it is in many ways one of the most painful things you can go through ever. And here to literalize that, we have the degloving scene. I think it is kind of every moment of physical pain and torture that happens in the book is representative of mental pain and torture that Jesse has already gone through. So it all becomes like the fact that we have one of the most disgusting physical things that happens to Jesse perfectly works in a book that we've had to witness one of the most disgusting things to happen to her with her father and having to go through that. So I think it all works for me.
One of the things I really enjoyed listening to you guys break down that horrible chunk of the novel is I love how when you get just moral men like yourselves who really, I like what Matt said about fatherhood being sacred. This is a sacred role. And I love that so much because although I'm not a parent, I have a great dad and I am 39 years old this summer and can confidently say my dad is my hero. And that's what dads are supposed to be, especially to little girls. They are
Yeah.
supposed to be your hero. And so it was really fascinating when you guys were taking a look at this text, and there's Scott has like the want to murder reaction, like the visualizations of how he would kill Tom, and
Yeah.
Matt as well. And I don't know, it's a primal, very primitive man thing. Like when you see injustice, okay, kill, death to you, and no less. But what's interesting, just for myself reading this book, I think that most humans, of course, fall into the fight, flight, or freeze. And some women would have definitely fought. And I know that a lot of women, when they read this story, they want to kill Tom too. But I think that what was fascinating about this novel is how making Jesse so little as 10 years old, and looking at myself as a 10-year-old and going back to that place emotionally, I froze. I absolutely froze, because you love your dad and that you are paralyzed by that love. And that's what makes it so, so dark, is because why would your dad do this to you? What does it all mean? The confusion of it all. And you're not yet aware enough to understand that this is wrong. She does react, she vomits, she cries. So she, at the fundamental level of her humanity, she knows that a line was crossed. She knows also a little bit about sex, and she doesn't understand it quite yet. But it was really enjoyable to hear how men react to this novel, and how there's a desire to just kill Tom, which I love. I actually love it. I think it's great. Some women feel the same, but then I froze, and I was like, let's, Jesse, you got to survive this. Just stay still. Just, and that was what made me very sad, is how I reacted to that.
Sure. Yeah.
That is sad. I mean, I feel like the reason why I'll speak for myself. The reason why I reach for like a violent fantasy in a situation like that is because that's actually comfortable.
Yeah.
Like that feels good. It's like, oh, I have an answer. I have an answer in my toolbox to this, which is I'm gonna use anger and the idea that I could do something about it. When the truth is, it's totally impotent. You can't do anything about it. I mean, first of all, it's fictional, but even if it weren't, it's a um it's a self-soothing mechanism, really. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, actually, but it is actually just a way of distancing yourself from what is actually just a deeply painful event. So not that I want to like rank emotions in order of validity, but I think that like freezing and sitting with it is in some sense a more direct experience of what the character is going through.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think my lash out in anger was me not wanting to deal with the emotions I was going through, right? Yeah, it's very easy to just say, fuck this guy, let's kill him. Yeah. And by the way, I think one thing that the book does so brilliantly is it takes Tom out of the equation for Jesse, because when at the start of the book he's dead, he's gone. Like there is nothing physical we can do to this guy. We can't send him to prison. We can't kill him. We can't even confront him and just say, you did this horrible thing to me. All that's gone. So this isn't even about, justice or setting things right. That you can't, that's taken away from our character. And so it just becomes about her ability to process it and find a way to finally, move on. Sounds so trite, but like just get to a place where maybe she could one day be okay, which is where we leave her at the end of the book.
So I think one thing I want to hear your opinion on, Kim, is just the whole phenomenon of the Moonlight Man and the role of this character in the story. And the segue there is, yes, we can't get justice, but she can sort of make her stand and um uh express her rejection, of she can spit in the face of the force that did this to her, even if it's not actually the man that did this to her. That was kind of where we ended up. But I wondered what you feel about that aspect of the story.
Oh, I love this question, and I definitely agree with you. But on my initial reading, when he first appears in the room, which is so scary, by the way. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, my heart's pounding because it's terrifying. But I thought, I was noticing so many feminist little angles around here. And one thing you learn in a feminist lit or theory class is they're always talking about women writers and insanity or madness, because when a woman, at least in the last century, was deemed as property, you have no identity, you're just a mother, you're just a wife, you can't emotionally process. And then if you did have an emotional breakdown, you were just labeled hysterical and you might have been institutionalized. And so we've got a lot of feminist writers who write about, like Charlotte Perkins Gilman and the yellow wallpaper, right? There's so much insanity throughout feminist literature because that was our only choice. We either lose our mind or die, or, just completely shut off this just being a female on this in this human experience. You had to cut all that off. Anyway, without getting too much on that tangent, when Jobert appeared, I was like, oh no, is Jessie crazy? Like, she snapped. And so I thought for a second that he was going to take it in that angle, and he could kind of does a little bit, because we have a little bit of inklings that Jessie is not doing well, because the voices are birthed immediately after the eclipse. We've got Goodwife Burlingame, we've got Ruth, we have Pumpkin, and so we've got a lot of people in her head, and I was convinced he was going to go the madness route with it. So when he doesn't, and we have that moment that you spoke of, Matt, I love it so much. I think it's great that she's not mad, she's not crazy. This is not insanity at all. No, this is a woman surviving and claiming and incarnating into the bravest form she can muster to stare this literal monster in the face and spit in his face, according to the novel, which is wild. So I love that. I think it was great, and Jobert really scared the hell out of me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I think I didn't have, didn't occur to me the idea of like, oh no, are we falling into a kind of a tired trope? But, I think my first reaction was kind of like, is this necessary? Like, it already seems like such a tight premise. Do we need this? And then by the end, I was told that we did need this, actually. So great.
Yeah, a lot of the feedback I see from this book is directed around the idea of, did the book need Jobert? Did either A, we need him at all? We need this figure in the room, and then B, did we need him to actually be a physical, real person at the end of the story? And I just agree with both of you that the answer to that both questions is absolutely 100%. It is key to everything that the book is doing, that there's this presence that turns into just another man, a man who, unlike all the other men in her life, a man whose monstrous inside matches his physical exterior. For like every other man in her life is kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing to a certain extent, and Jobert is the exception to that, and that is the one that she's able to confront. It's perfect. It really is.
Yeah.
Kim, I'm curious, like, the thing I can't get over, and we talked about this already, but I just can't get over that Stephen King sat down and was like, I'm gonna write this feminist novel exploring what it's like to be a woman, exploring what it's like to go through a horrendous sexual assault, exploring what it's like to go through, this relationship with her husband that gets very close to rape. Like, just the the almost insanity of Stephen King to like sit down and think on any level that he, a man, could accurately like depict any of this. I mean, kind of what's your thought on all that? Because it just seems like I just would not ever have the guts. Like, I don't care how many successful bestsellers I had in my life. Like, by the 90s, he's pretty cemented as one of the greats, but I still don't think I could sit down and be like, yeah, I got this. I can do this.
This is a great question, because yeah, it is brazen. It's really, really like, wow, okay, buddy. My hypothesis is that 1987, we have that intervention and we've got Sober King and he's coming out of it. And so the 90s is the experimental decade, which you guys have discussed a little bit. And I think that it might have been that, like, let me have a crack at it. I think I could do it. I think I could do it justice because I think he is that kind of artist to
Hmm.
just say, let me give it a try. I did it with Carrie. I did it with um, I really like this character, even though the novel's not great. I did it with Bobby Anderson in the Tommyknockers. Very progressive lady. Didn't get as much screen
Mm-hmm.
time as she should have, but I think he was cracking some eggs with some very progressive females who were strong, who were self assured, who were independent. And so I think by the time we get to 92, I believe he just was maybe in a state of healing or maybe in the process of therapy or something
Hmm.
or other where he was reading about therapy or healing practices. And I think that he just wanted to go for it and explore a marginalized character, a marginalized woman who went about doing her thing, not ruffling any feathers, not rocking the boat because of something that held her down her whole life. And so it's just a guess that I feel he was just real confident right around that time.
I think that's true. I think he's just a very confident individual, especially at that time. One of the things I also was thinking about, and Matt, you and I have talked about this, I think off mic a little bit, but I was thinking, like, does he think he can really, like, he, a man, can teach people what it's like to go through this? Because I do think this book serves a value of just being an empathy machine, of getting people into what it must be like to go through this, especially men reading this book, what it must be like to, but again, like the the brazenness of I can teach people this. I actually don't know, that don't know Stephen King, might be just completely making this up, but I don't find his books didactic that much. And there's a part of me that just wonders, is just writing the way he processes and learns and explores ideas. And so this book was not about, like, I'm going to set out to teach people what it's like to go through this horrible harrowing experience, but he himself wanted to learn what it's like and wanted to experience and wanted to build empathy in himself for women that have gone through things like this, and writing is how he does it. And so I do think, yes, you have to have some certain level of ego and confidence to think you can pull that off, but I also think sometimes he just sits down with the keyboard and just says, I want to learn about this, and this is the way I learn.
I like that.
I also think that Stephen King just has like an extra empathy lobe, and because I don't know that he just seems to be able to kind of slip into the skin of whatever character, from whatever background. And I pretty much, we've read so many of his books now. It always just feels like, yeah, that's a very human, three-dimensional character that's on the page, and you forget, unless you're having a conversation like this, that it was written by a man of a certain, demographic and age and whatever. He's just that's kind of his superpower. I mean, it's funny. He's the problem with King is he's got too many superpowers. He's got several different superpowers, but that's one of them.
Freaking
Um,
Superman. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, Kim, did you ever have any, like, men writing women moments in this book where you, like, a kind of eye rolly, this is clearly a man trying to get in the head of a woman? I'm very curious. Like, I'm just very curious. Obviously, taking the Stephen King out of it, I wonder how much this story changes if it was written by a woman versus written by a man.
Oh, I really like that a lot. That's a great observation because there wasn't that I recall any moments where my spidey sense is like, this is crap. No way, Jose. Because we don't have. What's fascinating about Gerald's game is Jessie's mostly by herself and she's in
Yeah.
her head. And so that's the core of our novel. We have a little bit of the sex stuff with Gerald and their strange bumpy marriage at the beginning, and that's where you kind of learn, oh, Jessie just doesn't really speak up and she actually doesn't really care for Gerald, even though we don't hate Gerald. We were very wary of Gerald because it seems like Gerald's proclivities are becoming dangerous. He has morphed and changed into somebody who is going to profoundly endanger her, and we all know that story. But I there's not really a concrete, we don't have sweater nubbins or anything dumb, like
Yeah, yeah.
we don't have I feel we don't have early 80s King. We don't have Bachman King coming through. I
Mhm,
feel this has got such a deep psychological root. And so I don't know if there's much flesh in the game. And the flesh that is in the game is mostly Jesse talking about how gross Gerald is, how he looks dumb when he laughs, how he smells, and the booze coming out of his pores when he sleeps. It's like, oh yeah, this is a lady who has not expressed her true feelings ever. And
mhm,
I thought that was pretty honest. I thought that was pretty authentically woman, because Good Wife Burlingame is dead on. Ruth is a militant voice, right? That's all of us on our best day, I think. But Good Wife
mhm.
Burlingame is the heart of the female experience, gents. Like, we are taught as women to button up, buttercup. You do not rock the boat because you are a second class citizen, especially if you're a mother, especially if you're a wife. You have to preserve your household, nurture, pour all of yourself into everybody else but yourself. And Good Wife Burlingame, every time she spoke, I was like, yep, got it. This is what it be. So, yes, circling back, Scott. No, I don't feel there was a man writing woman in this book, which is great.
Mhm. Great. I love that. I love that. How do you ultimately feel about Gerald? Because Matt and I spent a long time talking about him and kind of what we picked up as kind of the interesting way in which the book and Jesse frame him, like not to minimize any of the potential threat of Gerald, but we just kind of continually like tossed back and forth, and I was very conscious during those conversations of like I don't want to seem like I'm minimizing the badness that this guy was, but it was interesting the way the book depicted him. I'm just curious what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, Gerald, from what we learn in the text, is somebody who kind of took the Ben Hanscom route of growing up. He
Mhm.
is not very attractive, and that low self esteem and low confidence colors the rest of his days, right? Even though he's a hotshot lawyer, never feels good enough. He is probably in a comfortable state of his marriage where he's drinking a lot more. He's not necessarily in shape, but he doesn't seem to be as alarmed by it. However, he's not very affectionate with Jesse. So Jesse's moderately concerned that, because as women, that's a big thing. Like, if your husband doesn't want to have sex with you, he's cheating on you. It's terrible, and then you have to double down and all these things. Not all women and not all relationships, of course. This is just some of the rules of the game. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I mean, I think we're speaking in generalities, and it's like that's this book essentially. Like the book is exploring these relationships and these dynamics in specifically to these characters, but also trying to be more broad in general. So sorry, go ahead.
right. I like what you guys mentioned about Gerald. We don't have concrete evidence that he's bad. We don't have a lot of this is a villain character. All we know about is suddenly within the last couple years, he seems to be sexually attracted to things that are on the more dangerous side. And then when he handcuffs Jesse, we do not have consent, we do not have a safe word. And when she's genuinely afraid and mad and upset and pleading with him to let her go, he doesn't. And so it's as if King just flips a switch in this character, saying he was unattractive, not very great, and then now he's dangerous. And Jesse should have spoke up from day one. Oh, by the way, Jesse should have never married him, reader. And so you're like, okay, all right, we'll juggle this. So
Yeah.
perplexing choices. I think he had good intentions to maybe label Gerald a loser who just had a beautiful wife who paved everything over for him until he had his own issues of which he didn't share with her, and they didn't grow together, they grew apart, and then he's into risky sex. and danger. But yeah, not a lot of depth in Gerald, I think.
I have a thought about Gerald that I don't think I've said on any of our previous conversations about this book, which is just that like Gerald, I think, is kind of like what men are afraid women think of them. Um,
Oh, I love
like
that.
as an archetype, because I mean we're very much in Jesse's head, obviously, so we don't really see what Gerald thinks about this. But part of my interpretation of the beginning of the book, like so and then it becomes more contextualized through the rest of the book as you learn more and more about how much she really didn't care for this guy who, she probably spent more time with than anyone else, and he probably spent more time with her than anyone else, and yet there is actually just it's like a log that looks fine but it's actually rotten. It's like there's nothing there. There's nothing of substance there, and that's like a profoundly sad way to live. And it's actually like frightening to think that you could live your life that way, and like think that your wife loves you, and actually she thinks you're gross in every possible way, right? Like
Yeah.
it's and if and maybe he's on some level even aware of this, and then like the moment where they're isolated, it's like what's coming to a head is sort of like the crux that's coming to a head from the Gerald side, which again we don't see because we don't know what he's thinking, is like he uh, he can't stand for it to be revealed that she's pretending. That's that's unacceptable. That would
Mm,
mean that she's been pretending this whole time.
yeah.
And that's terrifying. That's a horrible thought. Actually, this is maybe
Yeah.
overly generous to this Gerald character, but like I don't want to just like write Gerald off as like, oh, he's just like he just sucks. He just no, like I think King had in his mind an internality to this character, and the internality is something like um he is in his own mind probably harbors his own sort of complicated weird feelings about this marriage and is in
Sure.
denial. Everyone in this book is in denial, right?
Yeah.
He's in denial. He thinks they have a great marriage, but he also knows they don't at the same time.
Mhm.
Everyone is a contradiction. These are my new thoughts on Gerald that I haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I really love that, and I love the way like that can make him incredibly dangerous, right? Like this in this dynamic, even this guy who has this justifiable insecurity about his wife and his marriage can flip a switch in him that makes him just without warning incredibly dangerous to her. And that experience of you never know what's the thing that's going to set him off, what's the thing as you kind of bump up against that line, as long as we don't cross the line we're good, but you're living in a world where what thing am I going to do today that could bump across that line, and it's a thing I didn't even know about, like because I wasn't even fully aware of it myself. Yeah, that's almost more terrifying actually.
It
Yeah.
is.
So I was thinking about this because like s- I think like obviously there's a lot of things to compare with Gerald and with Tom, right? The book kind of goes out of its way to drive this connection, but it doesn't do it. I think the movie, which we'll get into next week, makes the comparison a lot more explicit. Like there's a scene in the movie where Gerald pops up from under the bed and is wearing the same clothes that Tom wore the night of the eclipse, like really driving home this comparison point between the two of them. But I think it's the book could have leaned into that a little bit more, and I find it interesting in the ways it didn't necessarily. Like these are two men that absolutely wronged Jesse, but did it in very different ways. And you just wonder if there's in the idea of synchronicity and pairing to make it so Gerald is just another Tom, but that's not really what King does ultimately. I don't even
Yeah.
know if I have a question there. I just find that interesting.
No, you're totally right. I think that the film does a stronger job in that area because
Hmm.
what we find out as the reader is Tom was a lawyer and so is Gerald. And so
Hmm.
I think that King wants the reader to observe that because of Jesse's trauma, this terrible cyclical pattern has erupted in her life. So she married Tom gross, but she did. But we don't have enough evidence to really marry that concept.
Mm-hmm.
It's too subtle, I think. I think you're right.
Yeah. Perhaps he just didn't want it to be so glaringly obvious that it's like, oh, Jesse's just stupid to have done this. It's like she should have known better. It's like, well, no, you can actually kind of see like Gerald looks great on paper is what you can say. And then it's only after you live with him for 20 years that you kind of become extremely tired of him, and then also maybe realize like the real reason why she went for him in the first place wasn't the fact that he looks good on paper. It was the fact that he was giving all these other cues that were familiar to her, comfortable in that way, where it's like, I recognize this even though it's terrible for her.
I think that's great because that brings us to the Brandon character. Matt and I spent a long time talking about this guy in last week's episode. This really, really fascinating last entry, last man in this story, who, as the text says, is the best of them, but still has like and actually this is my question for you, Kim. Like, we really picked up on like we had this weariness about him, this uncertainty about him, where like he does seem like the best of them, like he doesn't do anything bad in the story, but there is like just this through line of her interactions with him that always left me a little like, I don't know. I feel like he could flip a switch too, possibly. I don't know. Is that just we're rereading too much into it, or was that there for you as well?
No, actually. I think for whatever reason, I think once Jesse gets free from the cuffs, it is like the biggest adrenaline drop, guys.
Sure.
Like, she's writing to Ruth and it's really, really expository, and the energy of the text has really gone down. And then this Brandon guy, I was like, who cares? You're two-dimensional. Like, you're just this like, and he's not, is he the lawyer? I'm forgetting. He's
okay. the lawyer. Yeah,
I'm just like, bro, like, get out of my face. I practically ripped my arm off. Like, you are small potatoes. So that was my reaction and I felt Jessie wasn't giving him too much screen time in her head. She was mostly like, I'm telling him this and he's disagreeing with me. He's not telling me that. But I didn't feel like I felt so empowered by where she was in the text of her survival and all the strength she was getting that I was like, I don't need to care about this Brandon guy. He's two-dimensional. Who cares, bro?
Yeah.
Like, next.
That's perfect, because I think that's where the energy of the book wants you at that moment, because you're right. Like, I don't think there's ever a moment in that part of the book where you believe Brandon's going to either convince her to drop the fact that the Moonlight Man was there, or actually stop her from going to confront him. Like, yes, he tries to do all these things, but there's never really any kind of inkling in the text that that's going to be successful whatsoever.
Yeah, I want to connect this back to a thing that you said a few minutes ago, Kim. That the idea that King was likely reading up on therapy concepts, and I sort of see this book as secretly internal family systems manual. In retrospect, I said before, I'm like embarrassed I didn't notice this myself, but once it's pointed out to me, I'm like, oh, absolutely. And that the ending of the book is like Scott said at the beginning, like physically expressing and realizing these concepts where Brandon becomes the firefighter subpersonality, and Jobert is the trauma, and Jesse is having to basically perform a therapeutic intervention, but in real life. It's teaching us these moves, right? Which I legitimately think King was trying to do, but also it's the reason why it feels different, like you were saying, is because Jessie has now learned the lesson she needs to know. So yeah, like Brandon is trying to do, what the good wife would have done, or to some degree maybe what Gerald would have done. Just be like, no, let little lady sit down. Don't bother people with your silly feelings. And she has now, by this point in the story, learned like get out of my way. We're going to solve this. And then she does. And like, yeah, I like that expression of it, that you're just, yes, maybe Brandon is sort of a wild card, but you're just not worried about it because Jesse can handle it now. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's essentially telling Brennan, shh, let the adults speak. Like, stop. Stop.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. I actually love that that's reinforced because it's like she's survived war. It's like she has emerged from the ashes, a new person. So yeah, there's 100% confidence in Jesse's ability to take care of it.
Yeah.
I love that. Can we talk about Dolores Claiborne briefly? So, Kim, have you read Dolores Claiborne?
I have not.
Okay.
not.
This
90s.
is good, actually.
90s is my big pothole, so this is the year we are doing it. So I haven't, but I know a lot about Dolores. I know it's Little Tall Island. I know there's something about her husband. I know it's similar themes, but that's about it.
Yeah. I find it really interesting, and I'm great I get to talk to two people that haven't read the book, because it almost makes it even more interesting that King makes this decision to link these two books together with this event that occurs during the eclipse. In Gerald's Game, it's the molestation. In Dolores Claiborne, it's the murder of her husband. Both of these things happen during the same eclipse, and it psychically links these two women together. I find it really fascinating, but I also, like, now that we're done with the book, Matt, like, I could talk to you guys about the fact that it doesn't necessarily go anywhere outside of the knowledge that exists if you've read both stories. Like, there is a lot of crossover between Dolores and Jesse, in what they go through, in the actions. Like I don't want to spoil Dolores Claiborne, the details of Dolores Claiborne for y'all, but there is a lot of both thematic and just literal, like, plot type crossover between the things that happen to them and the things that they need to do. But ultimately, like, it feels like a thing that you just don't know where to file the entire time you're reading the book. And even at the end of the book, like, Matt, if I hadn't told you in those moments, this is the part that's connecting to Dolores Claiborne, I really feel like you would just be like, huh?
Yeah.
What? So I think it's an experiment. Like, he's, again, another thing with the 90s is he's experimenting with both form and function, and he's wanting to tie these two books together. I think there was a plan originally that they were both going to be the part of the same novel, actually, and he, like, decided to like, it was going to be one novel with different stories in it, and he split them off. They became too big to be just part of one novel. They needed to be their own. But I don't know, like, it's cool and neat from an Easter eggy type perspective, but, like, it just, if you're reading this one book, there's nothing. I don't know what was your reaction to it, Kim? Like, did you recognize that, oh, this is the Dolores Claiborne part?
I did, only because throughout my constant reader internet dabblings, I kept coming across what was called the Eclipse trilogy, and I was like, what? And so, without spoiling too much for myself, I learned, okay, Gerald's Game, Rose Matter, and Dolores Claiborne are linked. And then when I read Rose Matter, there's like one sentence about an eclipse. So then when I read Gerald's Game, I was like, okay, here it is. And so, and now I'm looking forward to seeing it in Dolores. But Scott, do you feel this is like a deflated balloon? Was this a plan that did not get executed? Because this seemed like a real big idea for an embedded narrative, for crossover text, for three women, because we've got, I think it's back to back in their publication with Gerald, Dolores, and Rose Matter in 1995. And so this seemed like something happened. What's your hypothesis on that?
Yeah, either it got too unwieldy, because I agree, Rose Matter is like the third of the trilogy, but, like, barely, like so much less than, like, both Dolores and Gerald's Game directly talk to each other. Rose Matter is kind of the third one off to the side, like, referencing them. Yeah, I think he had some grand big idea that for one reason or another never really materialized in the way he wanted, but he liked the stories. It's interesting because he not only did he like the individual stories enough to publish them by themselves, but then he also liked that connecting tissue enough to leave it in there, even though it ultimately like is a like I mean it fits his desire to like his dark towery and desire to link everything. Like this is just a thing he likes doing. He finds it fun, and for the most part in his stories, as much as we all love to see the connections, there are just Easter eggs mostly. It's just like, oh yes, I recognize that. I know that. I remember reading that. And it's just like a fun, yeah, that's neat. And it makes you feel like you're part of some greater world of stories that you're reading. I mean, these two stories do link very thematically too. So it is I think more than just Easter egg, but it is like I'm just imagining in a time before the internet, like like how do you even process this, because there's no indication, right, that there's nothing in the publishing that says these two books are related. He just throws it in. So I do find it, and I think Matt will get into this more next week, but like the fact that Flanagan leaves this in too. I mean, not as it's not as explicit as it is in the book, but like he still leaves the connection in, which is a really interesting choice as well. Because I don't think it's been so long since I've seen the Dolores Claiborne adaptation. I don't think that adaptation leaves in the connection, um, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So I don't know. It is really interesting to me. And like it just goes in this. I just file it away, and the 90s were this time of experimentation, and some of the experiments didn't really take off in the way he wanted them to.
I do like that we have the scene with the woman with salt and pepper hair in the well, and it's during that terrible chapter.
Hmm.
So I'm like, J.H. Christo, thank God. Get me out of here. So I think I really did enjoy that it interrupts the dread of that terrible chapter for a minute, and it makes the reader very curious. We're like, what's going on? And that is a welcome feeling.
Yeah.
So I do enjoy where it's positioned and how it is revisited. It's a nice distraction from what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe like stepping back, the knowledge of the fact that I know this is related to another book might be clouding over what could just be like a more broad, larger point that's being made here, is that like the idea of the eclipse metaphorically is this darkness that women experience, this drowning out of sunlight that the men in their lives can cause in them. And Jesse feels in that moment a connection to this deeper well of womanhood, of all these people going
Ooh!
through a similar thing. And I don't know, like I think I think that could just be true, but like we all know the connection exists, so we stop thinking about it more broadly and go to the specificity of it. Because I'm going back to that question I asked a couple weeks ago about like there's this overweight freckled woman that we're seeing dead in the stocks, and I just don't know who that is. And like maybe I'm doing a bad thing by trying to get specifically who that is. Maybe it is supposed to just be this larger metaphor and larger, broader image. I don't know.
I like that a lot. The idea that it's just this a sense of connection and therefore a modicum of comfort coming from just the sense connection to greater womanhood.
Hmm.
I like that. I was going to say something quite different. I like what you said now more than what I was going to say.
Well, you
And
have
I'm
to
going to
say
say
it
it.
now.
Yeah, I have to say it. So what I'm going to say now is stupid and sucks. But no, I was going to say like it's interesting. So we had a few minutes ago we talked about the idea that you know getting to kill Tom is a fun escapist thing to imagine, right? And that's essentially what happens in the other book. I haven't read it either. My understanding is in that book you get to kill Tom. It's not literally
Yeah.
Tom, obviously,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like, well, that it is giving you a little emotional break, if as long as you know that that connection is there. I guess if you don't know that connection is there, then it is a little bit more obscure.
Hmm.
Um,
No, I
I don't
like
know.
that. I don't think that was a dumb thing to say, Matt.
Oh,
I
thank you,
think
Scott.
that's great.
I do like the eclipse connection because in the astrological woo-woo circle, eclipses mean strong endings and strong beginnings. And so if when I had that in mind, looking at these two interconnected novel segments, it's like, okay, I think this is the ending for Jessie. This is the end of childhood. It's over. This thing
Mhm.
kills it, which is so
Yeah.
tragic and so heartbreaking. She is not a little girl anymore. And I think maybe, although I can't say for sure because I haven't yet read Dolores, it sounds like it might be a beginning for Dolores. To kill your husband, you are taking ownership of something really
Yeah.
powerful. So that's the woo-woo astrological answer. But I also like just what you mentioned, Scott, about under the cover of darkness, right? It is the absence of light from the moon shadow. And we've got victimization in one story, and then we have the opposite. We have somebody potentially taking her power back. However, I don't know how calculated this murder was, so I don't know if it was like a heated oops. I don't know if it's an accident. Yeah, we could go poetic with that, I guess. I don't know.
I
It was
so
a
want to
heated oops, Your Honor.
I cannot. I cannot answer.
It was a whoops. He fell. He was running, he tripped, the well was open.
It's definitely how it happened. Yep.
Okay. I want to read that one though. That sounds like a good palate cleanser.
No.
No. Yes.
It's a good read though.
Okay.
I do recommend it. Is again like he's trying to experiment with form. So the entire book is Dolores's half of a statement to police. So
Mhm.
it's just that it's her telling a story the entire time, and because you're only hearing her side of it, like she does react and respond to things the police officers are saying to her and the questions that they're asking, but we don't get to see that part. It's just like the transcript of her recording of a police statement, which is again really interesting. It is him experimenting and trying to figure out, is there a new thing we can do with this novel thing? And so yeah, I think it's worth a read for sure.
Is Rose Matter also like a weird format, like
Oh my
these
God.
two books?
Oh my God,
Rose
Matt.
Matter is a weird book.
Okay.
Yes, it is a strange format, and I think we have a huge, huge, huge portion of magical realism. And I think there's a big Dark Tower portion as well. It's not very overt, but they're in Lud around Wasteland time. So, but yeah, it's banana balls. It is really, really heavy on magical realism, which we don't have. I don't know about Dolores, but I don't think we have that in either book. And then, yeah, he really makes a U-turn in Rose Matter. It's a terrific book, tons of cool symbolism, but it's very different and rather wild.
It has one of the most despicable villains in King
Oh.
history too. Like that, like, and I say that knowing that we just spent 4 weeks talking about Tom and how awful Tom is, but no, this guy in Rose Matter is Jesus. He's awful. But yeah, it's a divisive book. A lot of people don't really hang with the magical realism part of it. I enjoyed it for what it was, but yeah, I don't think I'd put it in my favorites, but it's an interesting read as well. I think worth your time.
Absolutely. I would like to get the numbers on that one. Like, I really want to pump that one up. Rose Matter needs to get more spotlight because it's a rich one. And I think at the time, the villain that Scott's speaking of, Norman Daniels, seemed very over the top, and people said he's like a caricature, but modern day, not so much. It tracks that you would have
Yeah.
somebody as despicable as he is. So I really think that Rose Matter would benefit from a rebrand campaign because
have you covered that one on your show, Kim?
I have many moons ago when I was little
Okay.
baby tadpole podcaster, and I don't think I did my best. I do need a revisit. So I have recently had a chat with a friend of mine about it who's a really good King scholar. So we're just talking about it's a real seminal King work because I think that Lucy's story is a twinner for Rose Madder.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a lot of cool parallels with later King works from this wild book. I don't feel people were ready for it in 1995. And now my book club, which is full of mostly brand new King people, they love the hell out of it. And I was
Oh, that's
shocked.
great.
I was shooketh, guys. I was like, I'm sorry, everybody in advance. This is a terrible Dark Valentine. Triggers abound. Please don't kill me. And I came to book club and they were ready to go. I was shocked. So, yeah, I'm a fan of Rose Madder.
Great. Matt,
Cool.
add it to the list.
It's funny. That's the most information I've ever heard about Rose Madder, and the best pitch for it I've ever heard at the same time.
Yay!
So.
Yeah.
I would love, all caps, to hear you guys break that one down because that is, oh dear. It's just, you think you know what you've signed up for. The first half is a very conventional domestic abuse narrative where this lady's escaping and starting a new life, and then we're in Lud, and she's literally walked through a painting, and it just gets more loopy from there. Totally worth it. Real big fan. I would love to hear you guys talk about that one of these days.
Sounds great.
One day.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to talk about was adaptation a little bit here, and I want to kind of frame this interestingly because we are going to talk specifically about the Flanagan adaptation next week, so I don't want to spoil that conversation too much. I've only gotten to rewatch it one time. I have 3 or 4 more watches before I'm ready to do a podcast about it. But I think we live in this really interesting world where like this is a book that everyone says was unadaptable, and then it got adapted. So we all live in a world where we know that was a false statement, essentially. But I just want to talk generally, like broadly, about the Herculean task of adapting this thing, without getting into specifically how Flanagan does so, because like from page 1 all the way to the end, it's like I experienced this weird thing, and I think we mentioned it a couple times on the show, where there are parts of this book that just do it truly feel unadaptable, but there are parts of this book that feel incredibly cinematic, and both exist at the same time. And I was just curious what you guys think, without getting into Flanagan's choices and what he did, about like saying this story should be adapted, and here's the way it should be done. What do you think, Kim?
Oh dear. Well, one thing that was awesome is I saw the film immediately after reading the book. And so it was really nice to just go in completely blind. And what I will say is I was very emotionally raw having finished the novel. I didn't like my emotional space. And then watching Flanagan's adaptation, it felt like a balm to my soul. And I don't necessarily know how he accomplished that, but I think just this very smart decisions, the way that Jesse's inner voices were anthropomorphized with the actors, and how Gerald had a larger role. The visualizations of everything, the room, the bed, the handcuffs, everything had the dimensions and the color that I needed to overcome it. And even the terrible, it's almost as if you need this extra layer of this film to be able to get through it, and then you close it nicely in your mind when it's all done. And it's so exceptional. I'm a drooling Flanagan fan. You guys are doing God's work with this podcast, but I just was so genuinely grateful that the film existed for what it allowed me to feel emotionally when I was done with the novel. So 10 out of 10. I'm just so thrilled.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I had never considered it that way. Like this was one, I think I mentioned this in the first episode, but this is one that I saw the movie before I read the book. So I saw Flanagan's film back when it first premiered, had not read, and then came back and read Gerald's Game afterwards. So I had the movie in my mind while reading the book. So again, it was like this weird thing of like, I was told it was unadaptable, and I can see the arguments for why. Like I can read the book and see the arguments for why this would just be an impossible task. But at the same time, I have every scene visualized in my head as I'm reading, because I've seen that visualization done with the adaptation. So I think it's a really weird experience for me. And Matt, I know that was essentially true for you as well, because we did a bonus podcast on this movie years ago,
Yeah.
before we even knew we were going to do this show in particular.
Right. Yeah, I feel like we're probably going to say this a million times next week when we talk about the movie, but I feel like the movie rides on Carla Gugino being able to embody this character.
Yeah.
And like kind of so it's a weird book because you're locked in a room with one person for the whole book.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's mentally going other places and there are other voices in her head and so forth, but you're always coming back to her. There's like this looping, you keep coming back into the confines of her mind, and it's like, well, okay, then you're gonna need an actor who can carry the weight of the whole movie. And she does that. And what you said about the movie sort of being a balm, it's like I think a lot of that is her, Carla Gugino's like humanity and vulnerability in embracing and wholly taking on like all of the dimensions that are inside this character. Yeah, just an amazing movie overall. Like so many fascinating things, so many interesting choices. But I think we're going to talk about Carla Gugino a lot when we talk about that movie.
Yeah, we're going to spend 3 hours on the episode, and she will get 2.5 of them. So yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
yeah. It's the one adaptation choice that I am just like, yeah, that makes sense. Is where you're just like, okay, the voices have to be other people.
Yeah,
and if you're going to do that, having one of them be Gerald is like, okay, yeah, good, exactly.
Yeah. I do wonder how early in the writing process that solution was stumbled upon, because it seems like it would have had to be like the first idea, that because it changes it allows you to bring structure to this entire thing in a way that makes it work visually, because it's like, and I agree with you. I mean, I think the one big thing that the unadaptable reason is because how are you going to find an actor that can carry the load of doing everything this book requires one person to do? And it's like, oh well, you just have to find Carla Gugino, and then boom, done. and she wasn't even originally cast in the role too, is the crazy thing. Like,
I didn't know that.
She was a last minute replacement. So sometimes everything just kind of comes together, and we have a great movie that we get to talk about next week. I can't wait.
Yep.
We took a little break from talking about movies, but we're about to jump back into it.
I'm so excited for you guys. What's awesome is it's like film school 101 with Flanagan. Every single little prop, he'll show it to you, and then he uses it like Chekhov. Like Chekhov says. So it's exceptional, and I felt immediately better when I finished it. And I don't know how he did that.
I want to watch it again with that in mind, and see if I can unlock the mystery of how the movie covers the same material that the book covers, but somehow allows you to emotionally get through it in a different kind of way. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Me too.
All right. Is there anything either of you wanted to say about Gerald's Game that we haven't said already? I think we did this book justice, but just wanted any last words on Gerald's Game.
I do have one quick question. This was from my book club. We were talking about this very long segment in the last act of the novel where she's writing to Ruth. It's a very long letter. It's very emotional and layered. Do you guys think that Ruth would write her back?
That's a great question. I think we briefly touched on this at the very end of our episode last week, but I don't necessarily remember exactly if we answered that specific question.
No, I think what we basically said was we feel like there is closure regardless. Now, it is an interesting question whether she did write back or not. Gosh. I mean, the Ruth that we have been told about in the story seems like an incredibly empathic, loving person who probably thinks about Jesse the same way that Jesse thinks about Ruth. And I actually, now that I've fully downloaded the question, I would find it surprising if she didn't reply.
Yeah.
What do you think, Scott?
I think there would have to be a very specific reason in her life to make her not reply. Like I think as long as Ruth is still healthy and happy in her life, and gets this random letter from her old friend that explains every bit of their of why their friendship ended the way it did, and then also relays to her this absolutely harrowing story of near death that she just went through. Just everything I know about this woman, I just don't believe she would not respond. I think she would pick up the phone and call, because I think the last note in the letter is, please write back, or better yet, give me a call. I think she would pick up the phone right away and call her.
Yeah.
So
I also had one final question, really quick, when you're done, Scott.
Yeah, no. I think what Matt says though is I think the good thing about the ending is I think it ultimately doesn't matter. I think Jesse has, just by writing it and sending it, Jesse has gone through her own kind of therapeutic action, that is going to hopefully lead her down the road towards some semblance of recovery. But yeah, no, I think she will.
Definitely. I agree with both of you. We don't need to know, because we feel it's been sealed and it's been accomplished, and we're okay with that. So I like this.
Yep. Cool.
My last question is in regards to Raymond Joubert. Did you guys feel that, was there any point when you're reading about his terrible laundry list of crimes where you're like, is this too much? Is this a little over the top? Is this slightly silly that we're going this hard? Like, what are your thoughts?
That's really interesting, because I think I'll maybe work my way around to a concrete answer, but like, he is just like a grotesque, over the top, like everything about him is described as just like, make a list of all of the worst things you can do, and he's done them. And also, he's like just described consistently as just physically terrifying, to the extent that you kind of feel bad, where you're like, he's just like unlucky. He's just deformed. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is when I was talking earlier in the episode about how his outward physical manifestation matches his inward monstrosity. There was a part of me that, like, in my brain pinged off that. It was like, well, hey, hold on. This is just a guy suffering from a disorder that he has no control over. Like, that doesn't make him bad. It's just like, and I do think this is just like, it was the 90s. We didn't think about these kind of things.
But I think it connects to this idea where, like, he is like just a ghoul. Like, he's a we talked earlier in the show about the idea of, like, you don't know if he's a supernatural creature. He could be a ghoul. He could be an undead creature. That like, up until nearly the end of the book, he could be an undead creature. And King wants that. I think King just wants to cast him as just a literal nightmare monster.
Yeah.
And does that end up being a little bit over the top? Perhaps so. I find myself wanting to imagine the counterfactual of, like, what if he had just been, a man, a normal looking man in the room with her, and maybe he's done like half as many horrible crimes. Is the effect different, and how is the effect different?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where I land on this. We did talk a lot about this idea that there's like a spectrum that goes from, like, the dog on one end, where it's like, commits kind of bad quote unquote deeds, but like out of legitimate need to survive. And then we like the spectrum goes all the way to Joubert, who's like, all the dials are turned to maximum. And I think that's kind of the point of Joubert, is to like establish this spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think my version of that answer would be just like, yes, it's over the top and absurd, but I think it's supposed to be. Is that it's like, yeah, he is supposed to be this embodiment of every single bad thing a man can be and do, to represent broadly, like, the monstrosity of, I mean, men, for lack of a better term, but like the specific men in in Jesse's life. So yeah, it's absurd, it's over the top, it's ridiculous, but that is how he serves ultimately the function of the story, I think.
It works. I noticed when I was reading about all of his heinous, terrible things, I think I had such soul fatigue as the reader from this emotional journey that I was like, for fuck's sake, really? Like, really? Like, we
That's
have
fair.
just gone through hell. We have
Hmm.
survived hell. And
Hmm.
now we have to come again. We have to face off this demon, that's just walking the earth, this deformed serial killer with a penis necklace. Are you kidding me? So I think there was a little bit of just, god damn it, in my readership.
Yeah, I get
That
that. I totally get that.
I could not be tied down, gentlemen. I was just pissed off at that point, I think. So
Totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that I agree that is a highly valid response.
I mean, one thing, and I'll just repeat something Matt said last week, though, that he pointed out that I thought was really interesting, is the way we're kind of introduced to Jobert's crimes is we start with the things he's kind of started with, which is like the desecration, the necrophilia, the cannibalism. We start with that stuff, and it's not until later in her description that we get to the murder, the rape, like these crimes that have living victims. And Matt pointed out last week, it's almost as if she's prioritizing the defilement portion of who Jobert is over the murder and the sexual assault parts, because, and I think the conclusion we essentially reached in that was like, because that is like this much higher level, like upsetting of the natural order in this very specific kind of way, that's why that's being highlighted, because like that is the most, obviously, like murder is bad, I'm not minimizing murder, but like he represents like this complete defilement of everything, and
Yeah.
so those were the crimes that the book focused on first.
it makes sense. It makes sense. Your strongest warrior is now ready for battle, having survived and been built up enough. It does work. It does on
Yeah.
paper, but emotionally, I was just
I
so mad.
I totally get it. I totally get it. Yeah.
So mad at that point. But
Mhm.
it does work, and I think that I wouldn't change a thing. I would not change anything about Jobert's heinous existence.
I mean, there is like just some truth to the fact that like she gets out of the handcuffs and then the book says, "Oh, we're not done yet." And I think that is, as we talked about it, as like that is the fact that just freeing yourself from the situation is not recovery, is not getting better, is not it's the beginning of a road. And then we get to see her kind of take those first steps on that road and how difficult they are. And part of the problem is, on that road there's a giant penis necklace monster.
Absolutely. I was really astonished as to how emotionally draining I was feeling by like mid book.
Mm,
And it's exactly how I felt in Misery, where I got to halfway through and I was like, I want to quit. I am super over this.
yeah.
And a lot of the King readers who are new constant readers did want to give up on this book, and I think it's a sad thing because it is such a worthwhile narrative experience, but it really takes you through the shadow of death, guys, the valley we be
Yeah.
trekking. So yes, very extremely pleased that I finished it, and I encourage more people to do so, and I hope they will with the assistance you guys have provided with your analysis.
Yeah, I mean, I
Thanks.
feel bad because I think we made a lot of people read this book that hadn't read it before, and they're just like,
Ugh.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think a lot of people have enjoyed it, even knowing how difficult of a book it was. I do think, there are a lot of disadvantages to reading the way Matt and I read, breaking up one book over 5 weeks as we've done. I do think one of the advantages of it is that we get built-in breaks. So we sit with it very closely for an extended period of time, and then we get essentially 6 days off from it where we don't really have to be in it. You read it pretty quickly. You read it over the course of a week, essentially, right? So yeah, that's a lot of very short time with a very emotionally exhausting story.
It's been so nice to verbally process with you two gentlemen, because that is how I emotionally regulate, which is why a Stephen King podcast is immensely
It's perfect, yeah.
helpful to my emotional health. But yeah, it's been great talking about it in a book club setting, in this setting, because it's just like letting the steam out of the pressure cooker. It helps me make sense of narrative decisions and look at them with a more logical eye, because it is hard. It's really hard as a woman reading this book and speaking
Yeah.
to people who have had real life sexual abuse. It's soul shattering. Absolutely is one of the hardest things to realize. Oh yeah, this stuff's real. This stuff is very, very real. And there are so many few who are as fortunate as myself to have an incredibly healthy relationship with their father. And you guys are, more power to you raising children and being good dads. You guys should just take a bow. It's the hardest job, but I'm 39 and my dad's my best buddy in this world. So
I love that.
I just appreciate all good guys out there, and we should lift them up as often as possible for fighting the good fight.
Well,
thanks.
thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for chatting with us here. This was great as always. We love talking with you. We'll find a way to have you back for something. We'll figure it out. But this was really wonderful. So we talked about your podcast a little bit over the course of the episode, but could you give the listeners like a brief overview of what you're doing over there?
Absolutely. So I am a one-woman Stephen King podcaster where I teach university English, specifically creative writing. I specialize in fiction workshop. So I am always immersed in the world of fiction. And I fell in love with Stephen King around 10 years ago. And then during COVID, I just wanted to talk about him in the nerdy way that you guys understand. I really wanted to give a little bit more spotlight to the story and the storytelling. So I just set up a microphone in my little living room, and we've been having a lot of fun since. So yeah, I try and take the underrated approach where I'm looking at King texts that don't get a ton of spotlight, but as the King journey has broadened, it's pretty much everything now. This year, 2025, is the year I'm trying to fill in the pothole that is the 90s King gap. I haven't read a lot of 90s King, so I'm trying to get some of those titles read this year, and it's been really enjoyable. But yeah, I am a one-woman Stephen King podcaster who really enjoys making friends with other constant readers, which is why Matt and Scott are so nice to me. So it's been a really fun, laborious at times, as you guys know, but it is Stephen King and constant readers and Stephen King people and fans and the stories. It's my favorite thing ever. I haven't found anything to top it quite yet. It's just my favorite thing. And so I try to plug in with it as often as I can, because it is a great source of joy.
Yeah, and your most recent episode was on the criminally underrated novel The Stand. Nobody likes that one.
Nobody has even heard of that one, Scott. No one knows. Yeah, that was my first time reading it. It took me, good gravy, 10 years almost to because I stopped and started, and then I finally committed over several months, and it was awesome. It was a very wonderful journey.
Yeah, I really love the episode. I mean, you see it. I'm looking at it right now, 2 hours and 43 minutes. And when Matt and I drone on for 2 hours and 43 minutes, at least that's like cut in half. That's you talking for almost 3 hours. It's again, like, I am in awe of your ability to do this by yourself, because yeah, I've been podcasting for 10 years, and there's absolutely zero way I could sit in front of a microphone by myself and be entertaining talking for more than 5 minutes. So yeah, I mean, like, your show is excellent. We really love it. I've been also following your your coverage of the television show, which is delightful because I just did not like the show at all, and you agree, and so that's always fun to hate listen to something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my gosh, the Patreon. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the show 5 years ago with everybody else, The Stand 2020 on Paramount Plus, but I didn't feel I had the street cred to talk about it. I hadn't read the novel yet, so I was like, no, we'll wait. So 5 years later, we're I'm discussing my thoughts, and yeah, it's really hard, guys. That show is a challenge.
yeah,
It's a challenge to be positive about.
it certainly is.
Yeah.
I mean, we covered it in one episode, and you're doing it in nine. So
I'm gonna try.
props to you.
I
Props
might.
to you.
We'll see, Scott. I might have to double up just to cut the misery of everybody. Like, let's just sandwich these two together because nobody's having a good time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, we really recommend everyone check out Kim's podcast because like it's I listen to it. Like I don't get it. I don't talk about Stephen King and hear about Stephen King enough that I'm listening to other people's podcasts because I really do love the conversation you bring. I love how you organize your episodes, how you break everything down. You're really good at this, and it's a joy to listen to. So, hearty recommend. Hope everyone that is listening to this goes and tries out Kim's show as well.
Totally.
I appreciate you both so much. Your work gives me so much happiness and excitement. Thank you for all you do. This is a really cool endeavor with exploring Flanagan and his connection to King. But as many out there listening, we'll listen to anything you guys do. You can talk about paint drying and we'll tune in. So thank you guys for all of your kindness and support of my little show. my little minnow show swimming in the corner. We're just happy to be here. But thank you guys so much. This was amazing.
Yeah,
Of course.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we are back with just the two of us, Back to the Future, and we're ready, Matt, for some mailbag. We asked our listeners for some questions, and we got a fair amount here. We're going to go through them as quickly as possible so we don't make this episode too long, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. Matt, why don't you start with the first question?
This is from Falcon 41098, and they say, "Love you, Scott, but this one's for Matt. Can you talk about creating the theme music for Kingslingers and Flanagan's Wake, as well as your music background? As a musician and holder of a degree in music theory, I'm fascinated by the fact that you created those pieces, despite being a passive music appreciator, as I understand it."
Are you a passive music appreciator?
So how much time do we got here? So basically, I learned, took some piano lessons when I was a kid. So I had a pretty firm grounding in music theory from when I was young. And then I got really into playing guitar when I was in college and got, decent at guitar, whatever that means. And I've just always been interested in like composing things here and there. And so I always thought that the idea of composing music for the podcast was kind of great because a great opportunity. I'll put it that way, because it's like 30 seconds long, right? And it allows you to focus and make something that sounds good but isn't like a 6-minute song. I've never particularly managed to write like an actual song. It's just not a skill set that I have. Or
Can we
What?
just stop here for a minute?
Uh-huh.
I just want to reflect on the fact that you listen to way too much Tool if you think the average song length is 6 minutes long.
That's kind of a short Tool song.
Songs are like 2.5 to 3 minutes, man.
What about the 4-minute like drum solo though? How do you work that in?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just couldn't let that slide.
Yes, no, that's understandable. I mean, and honestly, that's part of I totally non-joking. That's probably part of the reason why I've never successfully written anything that I would consider to be like a full-length song, because my idea of a full-length song is a Tool song. So anyway, in terms of the process of writing the songs, I think I've said some of this some other places before, but I to kind of bring everything together, I use a piece of software called Mixcraft, which is kind of the Windows answer to GarageBand, which is
Mhm.
the more famous Apple program. And I use a combination of like the synthesizer in the app, and then I'll record actual instruments to the extent that I am capable of playing those instruments when I'm able to, and just kind of iterate on it a lot. Um, that's kind of it. I will say, like, if you're interested in how to make things that sound good, I'll say that in recent years I've got a lot of mileage out of the Rick Beato YouTube channel. He's incredibly famous YouTuber. I'm sure if people
Mhm.
are into music, they probably already heard of Rick Beato. But he does this series called "What Makes This Song Great," well, where he'll take a song and then he'll really break it down in terms of music theory, in terms of just really does a good job explaining why things sound good. And that to me, I, I, I at least feel like that helped me understand. Um, it made me feel like I was more active in my ability to like not only know that I like something but know why I liked it, which is important I think when you're composing, because you try something and you're like, I don't like that so much, but like knowing why is way more useful than just knowing that you don't like it, right? It's
Mhm.
kind of a general principle of making art, actually. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's it. I'm not, I have nothing like a degree in music theory or anything like that. I'm just somebody who has dabbled with moderate interest for many years. But thank
Yeah,
you for the compliment.
Matt is what they call a renaissance man, in the vernacular.
That's right.
He does all things.
That's true. I am a Renaissance man.
I mean, like, yeah, joking aside, like, yeah, kind of. You like to learn about everything a little bit. I think it's like I always feel like we don't talk about music on the show very often because, and I mostly blame myself because I feel like I just have nothing ever interesting to say about music beyond like I like it and it's good and it's a cheat code in film. It's great. But I just don't like if I were ever a director, like there's some directors that are like very specific, like they will think of the tracks for this, the like not even if they're doing needle drop tracks, but even just like here's kind of what I want the music to sound like. Like I think a good relation to this is Flanagan for Ouija, like put a lot of the Poltergeist track in that movie as like a temp track to just like a lot of times directors will do like temp tracks or they'll just grab songs from other movies as like this is kind of composer what I want it to sort of sound like or the vibe I want it to have. Flanagan did that with Poltergeist for Ouija, and it actually, by the way, they showed the movie for Steven Spielberg, and it still had the Poltergeist temp track in it, and Spielberg was like, stole my music. I mean, not his music literally, because Spielberg didn't compose it,
Uh-huh.
but like just fun side story. But the point I'm trying to make here is that like if I were a director, I would just be completely reliant on a composer to be like, I don't know, man, like watch the movie and tell me what kind of vibes you get and write some music, and I'll be like, yeah, that's good, that's great, I like that.
So funny timing synergy here on the Rick Beato channel that I was just mentioning. He did an interview with Hans Zimmer
Ooh,
like just this last week, and it was a really good interview. And and Hans Zimmer, famous film composer, talks about ideas like this, and he basically says, "I really don't want the director to tell me what temp music they were listening to, because then I will instantly have that in my head as like the
sure.
thing that I'm supposed to be doing." And that's just the death of creativity. So he's like, do not tell me what temp music you use. Don't even, what he says is, let's have dinner and you explain your movie to me. And tell me the story. And by the director telling the story, he comes to understand what they think is important about the story. And that gives him a sense of what, mood to go for. Um, and then he starts writing music, and that's kind of his process, which I thought was pretty cool, actually.
So you're telling me when I make the transition to world famous film director, I just need to work with Hans Zimmer and I'm
That's right.
set.
That's it.
Cool.
Yep.
Great. Perfect. I love the music that you write for our shows.
Thank
I
you.
know I've said that before. I want to keep saying that. Like I literally just like I said, I don't know anything music, so I just go to Matt and I'm like, um, it's like a western, kinda, but not, but also kinda. And like, I mean, I think the tricky thing about like Kingslingers, for example, is like by definition, you could not have read the book before working on the music for it,
Uh-huh.
right? Because like part of the show is you reading the book, and we needed the music done before you started reading the book, just to that's the show. Um, and so that was tough. That was tough for
Yeah.
you, I think. I love what you came up with. It's actually perfect, but like at least with Flanagan, you had like some semblance of an idea of like what a Flanagan story is,
Yeah.
that you could work off of there. But yeah, with King, there was nothing.
Just for posterity's sake, I'll mention like the vibe. I think I don't remember what exactly we said back and forth, but I kind of got the sense from you that it was, and I kind of understood broadly what the Dark Tower was in the most broad strokes. So I was like, okay, so it's like a Western, but it's like a fantasy thing.
Yeah.
So what I did is I spent some time studying, literally studying like the chord progressions from the Lord of the Rings music until I just like understood the flow of them and like the feel of them. And then I sort of like broke them down and took them apart and put them back together so that you can't really sound like I didn't like, take the chords and just like it's not any particular Lord of the Rings song, but it's sort of
Mhm.
inspired by that.
Sure.
And then I manipulated the instruments and the rhythm to make it a Western, right? You kind of know what I mean, where it's like
Yeah.
it. So that's how I did fantasy, but Western,
Mhm.
in short.
Yeah. And it was great. I love it.
Cool.
I really like the Flanagan's Awake song as well. There's part of me that like I have to always shorten these things down to like 30-second little bits because it's kind of the demands of a show intro. Like you don't want to play a 6-minute song. I'll say for you, you don't want to play a 6-minute song at the beginning of a podcast episode.
I listen to some podcasts that do ridiculously long intro songs, and I'm always just like, what are you doing?
I don't know, man. They're just really into their intro. I
Yeah,
mean, like it is difficult for me to cut it down. Like the first time I have to do it on the first episode, every time it's like I spend a long time like finding the ideal length, where to fade it in, where to fade it out, like both in the intro and the outro. And it's really hard when I'm liking the whole thing. And I was like, I wish I could include this whole thing, but I can't.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you have to make that decision because it's my baby, so I can't make that
Yeah,
decision.
that's why this works. You make the
Yep,
music, you send it to me, and I chop it up into little pieces.
exactly.
All right.
Thanks for your question, Falcon.
Yeah, that was fun. Have I told you that my midlife crisis is going to be learning how to play the drums? I've
Y-
decided that now.
I think you mentioned this in passing, and I was
Yeah.
like, hell yeah, let's start a band. Let's
This is
do
the
it,
perfect
man.
midlife crisis. Yeah. I don't play any musical instruments. I literally was like sitting somewhere watching someone play drums and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
drums. And they make those electric kits that are pretty decent, right? So you don't have to make incredibly loud noise that wakes up your entire family at 1 o'clock in the morning.
you know, kind of. I have one of those electric drum kits. I don't know if I would go so far as to say pretty decent, but
Oh no.
perhaps functional to the extent that if you're a beginner, it probably is fine.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear here. It's going to sound like shit for me for a very long time. Although I did play Rock Band pretty extensively back in my day, so
Oh, well, in that case, then,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
easy transition. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
They when you play real drums, they have like a line in front of you with all the notes you're supposed to hit and when you hit them, right?
And there's only 4 of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
hmm Now, there's a pedal, Matt, so there's 5.
yeah. Sorry,
So
5. There's the
back
kick
off.
with 1 foot, right? Yep,
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. I'm assuming this is just completely accurate to how drums work.
yep. I'm never sarcastic, as you know.
Great. All right. Moving on. Next, we have OK Row 2424, who asks, are there any other directors that you would want to do an entire podcast on? I know about the deconstructing series you do on Doofcast, but I'm asking about any directors you would want to do an entire separate podcast for. Oh, that's tough. There's not too many directors out there that have a breadth of work wide enough to like justify doing like an entire show on, right? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, even there was a part of me that even when planning this show, I was like, look, Mike Flanagan's done a lot of things, like, and the TV allows us to have multiple episodes as we're going through the television stuff. But even so, I was like, I think we still need to cover the books to, like, to justify making an entirely new podcast about it instead of just making an extension of something else we already did or something.
Hmm.
And that's part of the reason we had the book episodes, not the entire reason, of course. So I mean, there's definitely some directors that like. I mean, Spielberg, speaking of which, comes to mind. He's directed a crap load of movies. Um, Hitchcock's directed a crap load of movies. Like, there's plenty of directors out there that just have a very extensive library. Um, but this, I mean, this show was always in my mind like something I wanted to do, and I don't have like off the top of my head anything else that I'm like there's plenty of directors I would love to talk about in a lot of detail, but not like this. I mean, I had a dream of doing a Joss Whedon podcast once upon a time. Um, Probably not going to do that anymore for many reasons, most of which people here know already. Um, but that like I think it would have to be to justify having like a full show like this. Like, I think the people that work in TV a lot would kind of justify it to me. If you're like a showrunner that runs shows often, therefore we can like spend a lot of time talking about each show as we move through episodes. I don't know. Do you have any that pop into your head?
Well, no, I mean, I think sort of boring answer is the directors that we have done. The deconstructing directors series is on over on the Doofcast. Kind of already that those are the directors that we thought were the best candidates already,
Yeah.
probably. Um, and we did those, and in some cases they took a really long time. But
Yeah.
even Ridley Scott with his like whatever 30 movies or something ridiculous, um, I don't think could have merited a whole show unless you're going to do something like multiple episodes per show. So anyway, yeah, I don't have a really interesting answer here. I think the answer is basically just no.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's just the effort it takes to spin up an entirely new show to get people to subscribe to it, to like build an audience is a long one, right? Like, we're still working on that on this show, right? This
Right.
We are still building an audience. We are still watching the download numbers kind of tick up each week. And the idea that we would have a show that could be done in 30 episodes or less, like, it wouldn't be worth the effort to go through all that,
Yeah.
only to just kind of end it right at the sweet spot. So um there's very few directors that I think that just have. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It would have to be like we're going to cover the same film multiple times. And I don't know how much enjoyment I would personally get out of that. um Not that I don't like talking about directors and films, but like, I really love talking about these first 5 Flanagan movies, and I would feel a little bit weird if like they'd be like, all right, now we're gonna watch them one more time. We're gonna do all that again. Um, I would
Yeah.
struggle with it, not just from like an enjoyment perspective, but also from like, can I can I really, like, what can I say about this? Like, the only
Right.
way I could think about it is in like a king cast, like, structure where they bring a new guest on each time, and that new guest brings new insights and new things to talk about for each of the properties. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, we don't have quite the schedule and ability to book guests as frequently as they can. They're
That's
professionals.
yeah. That's a whole different animal. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think we have tons of directors we would still like to talk about. Like, I'm pretty sure on deconstructing directors, we're going to be talking about Paul Thomas Anderson next over on our other show. So that's a director that I've long wanted to talk to you about. I don't know how many of his films you've even seen, Matt. So it's going to be a fun few months that when we
Yeah.
get started on that.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right. Next from Apocalypse Wind 7. How do you think King's writing changes when he writes a smaller cast story like Gerald's Game or Misery or The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon compared to his more sprawling ensemble novels? Did you notice any difference in his characterization or stylistic touches don't usually come out when he has more characters to work with.
That's a good question. Um, I think I definitely noticed, like, I think King just naturally wants to sprawl, and like I think a great example in Gerald's game is the asshole dog owner that abandons Prince.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like King creates, as he's writing, an opportunity to jump into the backstory of a character, and because he doesn't have those opportunities elsewhere in the book, he really just dives into it, and we get so much more information about this guy than I thought we would. And I think that part of that is just because he's really unable to scratch that itch in a novel like this. So when he does, he really just goes to town on it. But like stylistically, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm it's funny because I have a very strong sort of immediate urge to say yes, there is a big difference, and then I reach for, and that's because, and then I flounder a little bit. I one thing I would say, one thing that came to mind is like historically my favorite King books, the ones that I have said, you know, this is just a beautiful book that I love and I'll remember forever. Those tend to be like the shorter, um, more small cast books. Like I said for some time that my, two of my favorites are like The Long Walk and um, Low Men in Yellow Coats,
Yeah,
which are both pretty narrow in terms of their cast, and that we really are just sitting with a very small number of characters for a very long time in both of those. And the funny thing is, it's like I also, of course, really enjoy and I'm entertained by the more sprawling books, which I would say like Salem's Lot, um, The Stand. Obviously, I think is probably like the number one in that regard.
hmm,
And then like it's funny because I almost put the Dark Tower in the middle zone there because the Dark Tower follows a very small group of people through the story very closely. And yes, there is sprawling, but the sprawling always kind of comes back to the center, right?
sure.
So maybe in some regards that's one of the sort of special things about the Dark Tower is that it leverages his skills in uh, keeping focus on a small cast and getting us to really fall in love with these characters while also allowing him to spread out as, but he always comes back to those characters in the end though. um
Yeah.
I don't
I,
know.
I think I think it's almost interesting in the ways in which his style doesn't change, because like I think even in the big sprawling books like, as you said, The Stand, the big trunk novels that are not trunk novels, the doorstop novels, that are go on for thousands of pages and have many characters. Like King is still so into like interiority of those characters and what's going on with them and their thought process and their decision making, and making sure that the plot is secondary to the characters always. Because one thing I was thinking about when I was trying to come up with an answer was like, well, one of the reasons I love Gerald's game is because it's this great concept of like what happens when a woman gets chained to a bed and her partner dies and she's stuck there and has to figure out a way to get out. But like that's obviously like the surface level read of the book, and underneath that obviously there's everything else going on with Jesse and the the trials and tribulations and trauma she has to overcome outside of the handcuffs themselves. And is like, well, and I was starting to say, well, like that's the type of thing he has to do in a novel like this where she's really the only main character. I was like, well, wait a minute. Every King novel kind of has a character going through that. Every King novel has like a surface level plot, mechanical plot that pushes things forward, but they are always really about the characters underneath it. Like it is not really a book about five friends fighting a clown. Like there's so much more going on there. The Stand is not really about, you know, good guys fighting Satan. There's so much more going on there, and this is just something he does generally across the board. And maybe like in a smaller book, like I think almost like the number of characters is directly related to the length of the book, because like in a book like Gerald's Game where there's only really one character, he doesn't have to write as many pages, but the second he starts adding characters, he has to do this thing he does with Jesse for every single one of his characters, and so the size of the book just kind of grows and grows and grows and
Mm.
grows.
Okay, I want to say one like actual concrete observation before we leave this question, because I
Please do.
think it's deserved, and so I think I'm thinking about how like King is the master of doing the thing where in half a page you feel like you totally know this character,
Yeah.
and he's more prone to doing that when there's a bunch of characters, because he's like, here's this taxi driver, bam,
Yeah.
now you know the taxi driver, bam, we're never going to see him again, he's gone. And but wasn't that fun? We all enjoyed that. We all know that taxi driver now is very memorable. I feel like the interesting thing that he gets to do with sort of the smaller, more focused stories is, interestingly, not do that. So, for example, like the main characters in Insomnia or Fairy Tale are these sort of characters where that you take a long time to get to know them. They're kind of not flashy. They're kind of internal and restrained. And what you actually get in those sorts of characters is we build up a sense of their, quiet selflessness and heroism slowly over the course of the book, and then you come to like really deeply love them by the end. But I
Mhm.
think he's actually on some level maybe even restraining himself from doing the thing that he's so good at, which is just like immediately stamp us with a powerful characterization. He more wants to take his time and give us a sense of this as a dynamic changing character.
Yeah. No, I think I like that. I think you're right.
Cool.
Good. I'm glad we pulled out one specific observation. Alan the Alien 93 asks, what is your preference, reading a book source material ahead of the movie TV series or watching it first? Clearly the show is reading first, so this may be an easy question. Yeah, that's a tough one. I think to kind of explain why we're doing this in the show in this manner, I wanted to be able to look at the Flanagan adaptation and talk about it as both a movie and an adaptation. And I thought the best way to be able to do the latter was to have the thing it was adapted from very fresh on the mind when approaching it. So doing the very detailed, slow, intentional read of the book like Gerald's Game before sitting down to watch the movie and then talk about the movie like allowed us to just have all the bits and pieces of the book very clear in our memory. So that's why we're reading book first, watching movie second. Um, and we'll continue that for the rest of the show. As far as like personal preference, I think it really depends. Like a lot of this Flanagan stuff, I did see the movie or TV show first. Like I think Hill House was the exception. I had read Haunting of Hill House years ago before I saw the show. Um, with Bly Manor, I hadn't really read. I don't think. Geez, had I read? Let me look at this list of stories just to make sure. Like I definitely hadn't read. Maybe I read The Turn of the Screw. I'm not sure. Had you read The Turn of the Screw?
I don't think I've read The Turn of the Screw.
I don't think I've read any Henry James actually. Looking at this list again, so I've read a couple of them now, but I really just wanted to have that in mind when doing this, and then um like The Fall of the House of Usher. I've read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe, but I want that Poe stuff readily in mind when we talk about that show. So, um, I
Yeah.
don't have a preference. I think obviously that just the incredibly true thing with this is if you watch a movie before you read the book, it will manipulate the way your mind like composes the images you're reading about, right? Like you will not always, but sometimes when you're imagining what the character looks like, you will see the film version of the character in your mind's eye while reading. Whereas if you had done it the other way around, it would have been an invention, wholly of your own mind.
Yeah.
But I don't
I
know. It depends.
I think the main thing where I would care is like if there's some kind of twist or dramatic moment that is difficult to anticipate, then obviously the one that you read or watch first is the one that is sort of broaching that secret to you.
Yeah.
And then that will now no longer be quite as surprising or surprising at all when you read the other one, whichever. So like I think we've said before, I don't that doesn't usually bother me. I can think of like one or two twists in my life that I really thought were worth um withholding, the
Mhm.
secret. It's like, you'll have a much better time with this if you didn't know the twist. Again, that's like I can think of literally three stories ever that I really am like, okay, you don't want to go into this spoiled. Um but other than that, I'm just like, yeah, I don't think it matters too much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think a very, very good, well-written story can overcome being spoiled on a twist. Um,
right.
and the less good the story, the more pivotal the twist is to the story working, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, like, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever really spent some time thinking about the the book is always better paradigm that you see so often in any kind of adaptation of a novel where people is like, the book's always better. That's obviously not true every time. In fact, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a book that we're going to be reading for this very podcast that I think the film is better than. We'll get to that when we get there, but I think it's true. And so I don't know. I think it depends largely. Like I don't like there's never been a situation in my life actually where like I've been, oh, this movie is coming out that I really want to see, but I know it's based on a book, and I will not allow myself to go see the movie until I've read the book. I usually don't do that. Like I definitely see adaptations of things I've read all the time, and if I really enjoy the movie, sometimes I will go back and say, "Oh, I need to check that book out since I enjoyed that film." But I am definitely not the type of person that's like, "I will not watch a movie until I've read the book first." Uh, that's not me.
Yeah.
Um, Alan has a bonus question. What is your favorite Elden Ring build, and why wasn't it a mage?
Um, I think I assume you mean sorcery mage when you say that, and sorcerer is the only
Right, lost
build
me.
that I haven't done. I've done practically every other variety of build, and the reason is because I didn't get any of the good sorceries in my playthrough. So there you go.
You know what I did?
What?
I ran around not knowing what I was doing, and then I found a cool sword, and it was a katana, and I said, "Google, tell me what builds are good with this weapon," and Google said, "Here you go." And then I did that and never strayed from it
Yeah.
because that is how I approach a game like Elden Ring.
I think if you want to hear the 45-minute version of this conversation, you can go listen to our episode on Elden Ring on the Doofcast.
Yeah, yeah, good one.
Yeah. All right. Pear Jane says, I had thought about Gerald's goofy characterization. Um, sorry, I'm messing up. Okay. We can look at the males in the book as a kind of progression. I guess my question is, what do you think of this? Um,
So I think Jane had written like a very long, like there were not. I don't think we're going to read the whole thing here because we'll be here for a while. But like a very long kind of theory on the progression of the men in this book, starting from Gerald, moving on to Tom, and then eventually the Moonlight Man. Right.
mhm,
Um,
right.
so I guess what was your overall thought on kind of this concept of that we'll briefly explain is like we're kind of on this progression of, you know, I don't want to say innocence, but like different levels of bad, moving from the goofy but sometimes terrifying Gerald to the child molesting Tom to the embodiment of monstrosity that is the Moonlight Man. So we're on a clear path there, and that might explain the way in which King characterizes Gerald at times.
You're right that it's a clear path, but at the same time, I still, even after we had talked about this book for so long and we just had that great conversation with Kim, I'm not entirely sure what the primary defining characteristic of this path actually is. Like, it's not just as simple as um like, do they know they're doing something wrong?
Hmm.
Because I mean, it's close to that. Like, that's kind of why I reached for that. Is that that's the closest I have to the answer? Is, do they actually believe they're doing something wrong? And and even that is interesting because it's like, well, Gerald being a dumbass doesn't like absolve him of his shittiness. It's so like not
Yeah.
knowing you're doing something wrong is not, that doesn't make it better, right?
Sure.
But maybe knowing that you're doing something wrong and doing it anyway makes it particularly bad. Maybe,
Mm.
I'm thinking out loud here. I mean, in the dogs, we also talked about this idea of like genuine need versus just getting what you want, and the
Yeah.
dog like actually genuinely dying of starvation. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you just have uh, uh, men who just have a physical urge, and they're like, can I get away with this even if the cost of it is, the lifelong mental health of my daughter, or in the case of Jobert, like literally just people's lives, and they're just like, yeah, I can get away with it, and they do it. I mean, that's obviously evil. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's something interesting to the idea of like, out of all three of these men, Jobert is the one that like is objectively, I guess objectively the worst is the wrong phrase, but like he's a monster, right? Like he murders people, he eats people, he has sex with corpses, and I think people as well. It's implied like every bad, disgusting act you could think that a human being would be capable of, Jobert does it. And yet, when we read about the bad stuff Jobert had done, we didn't get as angry and disgusted and uncomfortable as we did talking about the act that Tom did, right?
Yeah,
And a lot of the comparison between Tom and Jobert is that like this idea that at least Jobert is like honest and upfront about his monstrosity, both in that he outwardly looks as a reflection of what his soul looks like, I guess you could say, but also he like wears penises as a necklace. Like he's not
uh,
trying to hide who he is. He's not trying to manipulate people into believing he's something he's not. Whereas both Gerald and Tom, I think Tom to the most extreme extent of that, is is a monster hiding, is a wolf in sheep's clothing, literally, and is like part of his monstrosity is the fact that he is actively trying to convince people that not only is there nothing wrong with him, but that they should harbor some of the guilt for the actions that he did to them. And that like Jobert doesn't do that at all, right? Like that's not how he operates. So I think that's interesting in that like the on the cosmic scale of like which thing is worse, like I am much more furious, betrayed, and angered by the way Gerald and Tom act. Whereas I think Jobert, you can just kind of like shove him into a corner of this is a crazy monster man,
yeah,
and like it's it's completely like beyond humanity in almost every single way. Like we write him off as just this aberration of existence that occasionally pops up and then needs to be put down. Um, Whereas Tom is a functioning, successful, happy member of society that can pass amongst anyone at all times, and is doing things just as bad. Let's say, right? Um,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's what Jody meant or where to put that, but I mean, I do think that is an interesting thing that I don't know if we really spent a lot of time talking about throughout the course of this book.
Yeah, I think I want to home in on this idea of manipulation that Jody brings up, where
Yeah,
Jobert never manipulates anyone because he just is unapologetically monstrous. He just
yeah,
is forthrightly, floridly monstrous. And the dog can't manipulate anyone because it's a dog. It's
mhm,
in the middle where we're really kind of offended by the behavior of Gerald and Tom, both of them, because there's a manipulation of others, there's a social gaming aspect to it, and there's also like a being in denial and sort of patting themselves on the back and telling them, oh, this is fine. I think the
yeah,
most disturbing thing, which you think about when you think about Tom in specific, is like did he go the rest of his life able to just kind of shrug off what he did and be like, it was a lapse. It's not a big deal though. It wasn't a big deal. Or like, because that to me, that is such an infuriating idea to me.
Yeah.
Like the idea that a person could do something like that, not just that they could do it in the first place, but that they could then absolve themselves for just move on, right? While the victim of that crime is still suffering from it
Yeah.
ongoingly. I also wanted to, like, along these lines related to this, like, one thing about Gerald strikes me as like, if you watch a lot of movies from the early 90s when this book came from, um you get the sense that there's like this character archetype that was big in the mind of the 90s person, which is just kind of like Gerald, where it's like he's a sexually somewhat depraved, totally self-entitled, as Jody kind of points out, uh, uh, not explicitly like psychopathic, but also just like low empathy, um, and and just generally just very chauvinistic and uh, uh, thinking of women as lesser, and all these things kind of wrapped in a bag of
Yeah.
this character archetype. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. If I just say, like, go watch 3 90s movies, you'll see 7 of this character.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Gerald is. And it's like, maybe kind of one of the things King is doing is saying, like, let's actually look at this archetype, this type of guy. Let's actually look at this type of guy and not just have this attitude of like, boys will be boys, and be like, there is a continuum between this guy and rapist monster creature, and
Yeah.
it's not clear where what's the difference, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that by putting them on kind of a line of progression. You
Mhm.
are in essence tying them together in some way and forcing people to like no one on this line is innocent except the dog, right?
Yeah.
And I mean innocent is a I think blameless is the word that Jody uses, and I think that's just right. Like
Mhm.
innocent's a weird word to use about a dog because, but what you know what I mean. Um, I love that, and what I'm thinking of is a show we've talked about a couple times that have come up on discussion questions in the past, which is a show called Kevin Can Fuck Himself, which is a really fascinating show that I did. After someone recommended it, watch the first season of, and the concept of the show is basically it presents itself as like a average sitcom, with single camera, laugh track, studio audience, um, and the main character is the wife of a guy who's like this kind of goofy, bumbling moron, um, who is also incredibly self-absorbed and chauvinistic and all the things, and then it will at times cut to a modern prestige TV look at this same world from the perspective of the wife and how she's miserable and everything is dark and terrible, and then we'll kind of cut back and forth between these funny jokey sitcom scenes and this very like dour and depressing like examination of this woman's life and how depressed and sad she is about her all her dreams she's given up and things like that. It's an incredibly fascinating concept, but I love kind of slotting Gerald into the concept of a sitcom husband who is kind of dopey and stupid and actually when you look at their behavior insane and mean, but the but like so many times there's like the sheer of haha that's just silly men, um on top of it that you don't really think about kind of the both the micro and macro aggressions going on underneath a lot of their behavior.
Yeah. I love that. I agree. Yeah.
uh well, thanks Jody, that was a really great question, or at least comment that got us talking about stuff. I really like that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Next we have Das Gunslinger, who says, have you watched the Monkey adaptation? If so, what were your thoughts? No. I can answer this for both of us because I know you haven't. So I want to. Of course, this has been on my list. it is very difficult for me to get to the theater these days, and it is very difficult for me to get to the theater to see movies that my wife will absolutely not want to see. So essentially, I am just patiently waiting for the monkey to hit VOD, and the second it does, I will be buying it and watching it. But it has not happened yet.
All right.
Um,
Yeah, I'm vaguely aware of what this is, but go ahead.
I feel like we need to do an episode on this once it comes out. By the way, we still have to do a Salem's Lot episode on the most recent Salem's Lot.
Oh yeah,
We need to do that.
we will.
Maybe we'll do that soon. But yeah. Ooh, wait. I'll watch the monkey on Prime Video. Hold on. Oh, pre-order. God, get out of here. I guess like it's this really interesting thing where like I actually think this very short theatrical window is absolutely killing theaters right now. Because there's a lot of people out there going, why bother seeing it in the theater if it's going to be on VOD in 8 weeks, which is some of the windows, which is bad. I love the movie theater and I wish I could go. I actually got to go to the theater twice in one weekend a couple weekends ago. I saw 2 movies in the theater. I saw Mickey 17 and I saw Black Bag, uh, which Black Bag is such a everyone go see Black Bag before it leaves theaters. It's such a good movie. It's a perfect date movie. It's sexy and fun and tense and all. It's great. It's a great movie. But I love the movie theater, and I think this premium VOD window is killing theaters. But also, as a father of young children that do not get to go to the theater very often, is very helpful for me that these movies hit VOD very, very quickly.
Sure, me too.
So we're definitely going to be talking about the monkey at some point. I'm sure we'll do like over on our old podcast feed on the Kingslingers feed. We'll drop something about that, just like we're going to do with Salem's Lot soon.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. All right. Along similar lines, Busy Dad 82 asks us, have we seen the teaser for Life of Chuck? Curious what your thoughts are on how Flanagan might handle that one, given the unique way it's written. It's honestly one of the few King stories where I teared up while reading. I haven't read this, and I didn't watch the trailer because Scott didn't tell me to watch the trailer yet.
I mean, so I am extremely excited for this movie. I distinctly remember the first time I heard Flanagan was going to be doing this, and I was like, oh, that's perfect, actually. Without getting into any spoilers, because we are going to be reading Life of Chuck and talking about it and talking about the movie like a year from now. I think the thing about the teaser, I was actually talking to my cousin about the teaser, and if he's listening right now, he's gonna laugh because he said, "Hey Scott, why does this teaser suck?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, what?" Because I watched the teaser and I like teared up because I know what the story of the movie is, and I'm very excited about it. I was like, "What do you mean? How could you possibly say the teaser is bad?" And he goes, "Well, if you're not someone that is already in on Flanagan or like Stephen King, it tells you absolutely nothing about what the movie is." I was like, I guess that's kind of true. But like that's why it's a teaser and not a trailer, right? The full trailer will get into what the movie is about, and the teaser is just teasing you. And most of the focus of the teaser is teasing you with names. Stephen King, Mike Flanagan, the incredible cast that this movie has. That is, I think, the primary intent of this teaser. And of course, to kind of give you a mood and a vibe of what the tone and the emotion of the film is going to be.
Yeah.
So I was like, I got to a place where I was like, I mean, I guess I can't disagree with you, cousin of mine, but I am just incredibly excited about this movie. And I think it's gonna be really exciting because I think the buzz on this one, based on just the people that I know that have watched it already and really enjoyed it, it's gonna have a very positive buzz. I'm interested to see how well it does in its theatrical run. I think I'm in, I'm at a really weird point with trailers, Matt, where like I don't feel like I want to watch trailers anymore.
Yeah.
Do you like a new Andor trailer came out for season 2 a couple days ago? And I realized I still have not watched a single lick of a thing about Andor season 2, because I know I'm in on it already, and there's
Right.
no need for me to watch anything about it. I'm gonna watch it, and like that is a very different version of me. Like even 5 years ago, I would devour every single trailer for every single movie possible, because I love movies and want to get excited about them. And so, but I'm at this weird place where like if I really know I'm just in on a movie, then I'm good. I'm good. And
Yeah.
I'm not like strict about it to where like if I'm in a movie theater and trailers start playing, I'm gonna like shut my eyes and close my ears and avoid it. Like, yeah, if I'm in a theater and they play trailers, I'll watch the trailers, but I'm just not seeking them out in a way that I used to. So I don't even know if I'm gonna watch the trailer for this movie when the full trailer comes out.
Yeah, I have a close friend who would actually avoid watching any Marvel trailers ever because they wanted to just be able to enjoy Marvel movies in a
Mhm.
pure unfiltered way. And I thought that was a cool approach to it because that's definitely not the way I do things. But the funny thing is, I think I'm more coming around to your point of view where I can't remember the last time I saw a trailer and I was like, oh, yeah, that looks sick. Like, usually,
Mhm.
if anything, the trailer, your reaction is going to be neutral to negative because you're going to either be like, yeah, that looks like about right. Or you're going to be like, I don't know. I don't know about that tone, you know? So, yeah, maybe I'm not doing trailers anymore. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll
I don't
see.
know. It's again, I'm not like strict on this, so it's whatever, but I think some of the most rewarding film viewing experiences I've ever had is when I'm like at a film festival and I just walk into a theater with literally zero knowledge of what the film is at all. Um, and then I just sit down and the movie's good. And it's like you get to experience everything without bringing any of the emotion that knowing about the film or expectations or anything. Like, to be honest with you, the first time I saw Gerald's Game, which we'll be talking about next week, I saw Gerald's Game at Fantastic Fest. It was, I believe, the world premiere. So no one had seen it before, but I had not read the book yet. I knew essentially nothing about this movie or this story other than people say this is an unadaptable story. Like, that's what the buzz that I heard people talking about. I walked into that theater knowing nothing about that movie, and that was one of my favorite theatrical experiences of my life, watching that movie for the first time with a crowd like that. It was awesome. And like trailers are very important, right? I don't want to minimize trailers. Like there has to be some way to sell people on taking the time and money to go see a movie. um and I'm not saying I'm never going to watch trailers again, but yeah, for the stuff I know I'm like already in on, which like I will be there day one for Life of Chuck, I'm in, of course, not only because we're doing a show on it, but I just would be anyway. So like, why watch the trailer on that, even though like I know that I already know the story, right? So it's not like the trailer's going to spoil me on the story. um I just want to experience it when I'm watching it.
Yeah, totally. That's it. No more trailers. All right, thanks.
We're done.
Thanks, Busy Dad. Busy Dad also makes fun of us for saying we only have 9 shirts. I have slightly more than 9 shirts. That was an exaggeration.
And I want to be clear here. Like, I own many T-shirts. We're just trying not to wear T-shirts to this podcast. We're trying to get as close as we possibly can to dressing up,
Yeah,
which is to wear a shirt with buttons on it.
that's right. Look at all these buttons.
Yeah, so many buttons.
Cool.
Um, Bent Westward says, with the new video format, it opens up a lot of possibilities of doing guest interviews. Is that something you are contemplating? Many of Flanagan's cast regulars, I am sure, would be open to it. Perhaps Flanagan himself, or even King. Your interview style is engrossing, insightful, but also laid back. Adding guests from time to time could add an interesting extra dimension. Well, that was very kind because I didn't even know we had an interview style. So thank you for complimenting our interview style. Well, as you folks have seen already, we had Kim on this episode, so we do plan to have guests on from time to time. Um, Things like Mr. Mike Flanagan and professional actors on his shows. That's a pretty tough get for us. Stephen King also pretty tough get. So while we would love for those things to happen, we're not holding our breath, and I would suggest not doing that as well. We always like talking with people occasionally. Like, I think we have overview episodes whenever we finish something that we've been on for a long time, and that is always a great opportunity to bring another person in, a different angle, another voice to talk about the thing. So we will be doing that for sure. um I wouldn't expect Stephen King though. Please.
Yeah, I think it's funny because like I kind of got into podcasting because the idea of doing podcast interviews sounded fun.
Mhm.
And then what I've learned since then is that doing podcast interviews is actually way harder
It's very hard.
in a million different ways than having a deep dive conversation with my friend Scott, who I know very well. uh, it's a totally different thing actually. So, I get, like Scott said, I appreciate the compliment, but it's not something I think we're gonna be focusing on in
I
particular.
mean, yeah, I mean, I think we would love to have Mr. Mike Flanagan on at some point. We know that he has listened to some episodes of the show, which is still an incredible thing that I have not fully finished processing. I think like we have not really sought out to have that conversation about him coming on yet because I think there's stuff coming up in the show schedule that might be better to have conversations about, like thinking of Hill House, thinking of Midnight Mass, these lengthy things that are incredibly personal to Mike. I think would be a better avenue for having conversations. So, I mean, I think we'll try, but that's the most I can
Yeah,
promise right now.
we'll see. But yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. We appreciate that compliment. I did. Did you think we have a style? I didn't think we had a style. I'm
I
mostly just
mean,
bumbling my way through.
like I like not like self-consciously, but well, I mean, sort of. Okay, so I I listen to a lot of interview podcasts, and
Yeah.
I know what annoys me when people interrupt their guests or just want to use the platform to say. So like I like to just get the guest talking freely and have a nice like free flowing conversation. That's what I like to that's what I like to listen to, and I think that's what I try to do. So speaking for myself,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to do.
Definitely interrupted Kim one time during the incident. I'm so sorry, Kim. I think I apologized immediately after interrupting too. So that makes it okay, right? That's fine.
Yes, that makes it okay. That's how that works. um cool. E-Man 9001 says, "How are you guys doing post Kingslingers? I can't imagine what it's like building what I think is the consensus best podcast for a popular topic like King, then transitioning to a different topic. What's the experience been like for you?"
I don't know if I appreciate that you think that, but I don't know if that's the commonly shared opinion.
Let's meme that into existence, though. Yes, the
Sure.
consensus best podcast for Stephen King.
There we go. There's a lot of very good King content out there.
Yeah.
I'm privileged to be part of it. I don't know. I think we're doing good. Like doing the first 5 movies was fun. It was a lot of fun getting to do like a little bit of a different format and then getting to fall back into our kind of old format with Gerald's game over the past month and a half has also been pretty nice. And what I was hoping when we kind of defined the concept of the show is that it would feel like the best of both worlds. And so far it's felt that way to me. We've gotten almost entirely positive feedback so far, which it's difficult sometimes with podcasts because a lot of people a lot of the incredibly normal people out there, if they don't like your show, they just don't listen anymore
Uh-huh.
and go away and you never hear about it, which is fine. Like I think that's the best way to handle stuff you don't like on the internet, by the way. That's what I do. If I listen to something and I don't like it, I just quietly stop listening to it.
Yeah.
But that makes that sometimes that gives you an echo chamber where the only feedback you're getting is positive feedback. But I'm pretty happy with the response and what we've been doing so far, and we're really just getting started. Is the kind of the crazy thing. Like
Right.
this is episode 11, I think, of 100 and something. So we've got a long way to go. So it's been, I don't know,
It's
Matt.
been
What do you
fun.
think?
It hasn't changed our schedule too much. Like my day to day doesn't look much different than it did when we were doing Kingslingers. Admittedly, part of that is because we've been doing another King book. But y- you know, I think it makes things a bit more dynamic that we do movies sometimes and books sometimes, and we're going to be doing TV sometimes. We're going to be doing stories sometimes. That's going to be. I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to that. I'll put it that way. I know that's going to be different, but I'm actually really looking forward to that. Looking forward to the change of pace there.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like here in a couple weeks we're going to start a new book, but it's going to be a book written by not Stephen King, which it has been a very long time since we've done a close read episode to episode thing on a thing that was not written by Stephen King.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think we're happy. We're very happy. Enjoying it. Ready for the next 91 episodes or more.
Yep.
Big Willie Double XL says, have you watched any of the Conjuring universe films? Conjuring, Nun, Annabelle. If so, what are your opinions on them? Being raised Catholic, how do you feel about the movies where religion, specifically Catholicism, saves the day? I grew up Southern Baptist, so the closest thing to films about my religion saving the day are probably the nosy neighbor films like Rear Window and Disturbia. I could probably take this one. I don't know if you've seen any of these films, Matt.
I haven't seen these, although, I could probably talk in the direction of just movies where Catholicism saves the day, of which there are many. But yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, so I have seen The Conjuring 1 and 2, and I think I've seen the first Annabelle movie. I enjoy these movies for what they are. Like, I thought The Conjuring was a pretty great movie, and I thought The Conjuring 2 was very fun. These are the James Wan, like, horror universes. I think he's a very talented director. I think he leans on jump scares quite a bit, which are not my favorite form of scare in horror films. I will always remember, speaking of trailers, the trailer for the original Conjuring movie was so good because it was just like a snippet of a scene from the film that gave you the complete understanding of what the scares of the movie were going to be without really telling you like the overarching plot. So I think these are good movies. I have a problem with Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are the main characters of the Conjuring universe and are paranormal investigators and demonologists that existed in real life, um, and are frauds. Can I say that?
Uh,
Lawyers, can I
let's
say they're dead? They're dead.
consult with our lawyer. Oh, okay. They're dead. Okay.
They were frauds. Like, I just like it's actually really funny because if you watch The Conjuring 2, The Conjuring 2 has this possession that takes place in London, I believe it is. And it's a little girl that's supposedly possessed by the spirit of this older person. And you watch the movie The Conjuring 2, and it's a very, very creepy scene, very, very effective. And then you watch like the actual real tape of the interview with the girl who is supposedly possessed by this ghost, and it's very clearly just a bored little girl having fun and pretending.
Uh-huh.
And it's just that. And that's just what it is. But Ed and Lorraine Warren, they the ghosts are real and demons are real and they embellish and demand, and it's so the only thing that bothers me about the Conjuring film universe is if there's any person that watches these movies that come away with this idea that Ed and Lorraine Warren were real paranormal investigators and demons and ghosts are real and they were actively, and the Amityville horror was a thing that actually happened that way at all. It did not. It didn't. It just, like, okay, the most charitable read on these two people is they earnestly believed everything they said they believed, and they were not trying to con and hoodwink people, but they just believed it with all their heart. And so when any little bit of evidence that they got that maybe supported their beliefs and their opinions was extrapolated and blown up and taken to mean something more than it did, that's the charitable read on them. But I just think they were frauds.
Makes sense. What do you think about the documentary film Constantine?
Oh yeah, that happened. All that happened. For
Yeah,
sure.
I mean,
Exactly.
I agree that happened exactly as depicted.
Yeah.
Poor Shia LaBeouf.
I I am inherently interested in stories about the power of religion and the power of belief, and like I love these things. We've talked about them many times through Stephen King and beyond. I think these are really fascinating things, and I love a story in which we are both examining the concept of belief and the power of belief, and show the dangerous side of it, and also the incredibly strong and profound side of it. Um, there's this really cool television show I like a lot called Midnight Mass.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you've heard of it. That really dives into topics like that, and I really like that one.
I heard of it. Yeah. No, yeah, I love it too. Like I always we're reading A Canticle for Leibowitz right now on the book club,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll be doing in the
Tomorrow.
tomorrow relative to when this episode drops.
Yes.
And that's pushing all those buttons in my head where it's like whatever complex feelings I may have about this religion and complex and winding history with it, like there's something about the idea of just like earnest piety
Yeah.
and like putting something, putting one's faith above one's own interests and stuff like this, where I find it very dramatic. Even if I would never do that, I find it very compelling and dramatic to watch, and it's a fun type of character and type of story.
Sure. I think Catholicism pops up so much in this stuff because Catholicism is so like inherently, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this, weird. I mean, like the dogma and tradition of Catholicism is just like it's very dramatic. I think that's a perfect word for it. It's like very stylized and dramatic and just fits perfectly into these stories. So yeah. And for the record, I think you can fully believe in God and also think Ed and Lorraine Warren were bullshit. I think I don't think that's a mutually exclusive thing. I don't think it's either you are a Christian or Ed and Lorraine Warren were con artists. I don't think that's how it works.
Yeah. I didn't take that implication, but
okay. I know you. I just wanted to make sure that people didn't think I was saying that. Yeah. All right. Great question though.
Yep. Last one from Steve Living Room. They say, instead of a question, I propose an experiment. Scott would go back and listen to the hand degloving part while Matt goes back and reads it. It would be interesting to see if your takes on the scene would change. It's funny. I feel like when we were talking about this thought kind of flickered through my head and I didn't say it. So I kind of appreciate that you read my mind and then asked it as a discussion question. So good job. Yeah, because like I was talking about how I had to like keep pausing it during the degloving because it was so incredibly horrible and gross and nauseating.
And I was like the meme of the guy with the sicko on his shirt. Saying, yes.
Yeah, you were like, this is great. I love more of this, if anything. And I was actually curious. I was like, yeah, maybe I would react differently if I read it and it was just words on the page. But I haven't done that experiment, and I don't know that Scott has listened to the scene either. So that would be interesting. I'm curious.
I do have trouble justifying the expense of buying an entire audiobook to listen to a 5-minute section of something, but I've done stranger things with money. So
I'm imagining just like going into a Barnes and Noble, just beelining it for Gerald's Game. Taking Gerald's Game off the shelf, opening it, just like intensely reading several pages, putting it back on the shelf and leaving.
You're not going to get any weird looks on that one.
The FBI comes to my house. They're like, we have some security camera footage we'd like to watch with you and talk about.
What you should do is every person that walks by that sees you doing that, you should just be like, it's just the degloving scene. Yeah. It's that one. That's the one I'm reading. It's not weird.
It's for an experiment.
Yeah. I see no problem with this. Yeah. I see none. This could not go bad.
Yep.
All right. That was all the questions, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And that's going to do it for us this week on our... I think this is going to be a pretty long episode, Matt. I'm trying to remember how long our conversation with Kim went. It was at least an hour, probably longer. So this is going to be a pretty long episode. But that's how these overview episodes usually go. They're supposed to be shorter, and it doesn't work out very much.
It's true.
if ever.
Oh, well.
Yeah, but next week we are going to return to Mr. Flanagan. We kind of set him aside for the last month and a half, but we are returning to Mike Flanagan and his adaptation of Gerald's Game. That'll be next week's episode. Oh, man. I've watched this movie a couple times already, Matt, and I've got a couple more in me before we record, but I am very, very, very primed and excited to talk to you about this movie,
Yes.
which spoilers, I think is just legitimately great. Like just
Yes.
one of the greats for sure.
It's fantastic. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Remember, you can reach us via email at flanaganswakepod at gmail.com or on Twitter at flanagan'swake19. The subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia is the best place to answer those discussion questions, of which there is not one this week because that's how it goes.
Yeah.
We're on at Doof Media on Instagram and Flanagan's Wake Pod on Blue Sky. That's all the things. Don't forget that every episode can be found in video format on our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave us a comment. I have such a hard time ever saying like and subscribe. No, I can't. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say
Don't do it. They know. It's 2025. People know what we want. Like and subscribe. And also buy merch. doofmedia.myshopify.com. Buy some shirts, and then you'll have more than 9 shirts like we do.
Yep. buy 10 shirts.
10 shirts, and then you'll have a shirt for every day of the week, and also the days you get sweaty, you can change.
Yeah, you can work out 3 days a week, and then have one non-workout shirt for each day.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the plan.
That is the plan. Yeah.
If you like Flanagan's Wake and you want to support us, then please consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. We just released another great episode of our bonus podcast on the TV show From. We're having a lot of fun with that. And also just supporting us is its own reward, right?
Great appeal to the charity and kindness in people.
That's right.
I love it. Yeah, if you cannot afford to donate right now, that is, of course, it's always going to be okay. It always will. There are tons of ways to help us out. Like we said, this podcast is still new. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like we've been going on forever now. But we're still less than a dozen episodes in, so we still need your help getting the word out, letting people know that we're doing this, that we're covering the show. So please share it with your friends, your family, anyone you know that really enjoys Mike Flanagan. And I mean, Hill House is coming up, and it's a big one. So please share and share often. And also please leave us rating and reviews. This week's Spotlight review comes from Hilary Hilariaka. I think that's it. I don't know.
Hilariaka.
They give us 5 stars and say, Scott and Matt are far and away my favorite podcast hosts. I've been a fan for over 5 years, and I'm excited to join them on this new adventure. Check them out. Well, Hillary, thank you so much. You're my favorite listener. Don't tell the others. Don't tell them. They won't know if you don't tell them.
Yes. Thank you, Hillary.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who has sent those in. Please keep sending those in as we go through the show. We really do appreciate it. But that's going to do it for us this week, Matt. We did it. Good. We did it. It's all done now.
Yep.
We've done it, and we're ready to watch a movie and talk about a movie again. I can't wait. So that'll be next week where we cover Mike Flanagan's Gerald's Game. Until then, rest in peace, Mr. Flanagan. As long as you keep laughing, I'm going to keep doing it.
It's continues to be funny to me.